All right, see it's 6 o'clock. Go ahead and start our work session to order. Per usual, I'll do a quick review of tonight's agenda to make sure there's no clarifying points. We'll be getting a presentation from our Parks and Recreation Director, or really an introduction to Rochelle. Then on our consent agenda, is there any questions or clarification on the meeting minutes from our October 18th meeting? The resolutions, we have a public hearing tonight for the Advanced Finance Public Improvement Reimbursement area for the Viewpoint Subdivision. Any questions on that? Under old business, the Highway 26 Vista Loop Eyck Pedestrian Improvement Project has not stopped increasing in price yet. So we get to talk about that. Is there any questions? Anything to clarify before we go into that?
No.
All right.
When can we start?
It's called righteous indignation.
Yeah. So then ARPA, American Recovery Act funding priorities follow-up. Any questions on that? Then legislative funding request priorities discussion. Then under new business, we have our Parks and Trail Advisory Board appointments. We'll wrap it up with our report from our city manager and our committee council reports. With that, let's go ahead and get our work session started. We have the Pool Exploratory Task Force. Welcome to some of the members. We'll go ahead and get it started. Gordon, you want to start us with that?
Sure. Introduce ourselves.
Oh, let's go ahead and do that. That's good. I'm not used to having guests.
COVID, we don't really have.
Yeah,
any-
that's right. We'll start. I'm Stan Blaine. I'm the Mayor Sandy.
This will go this way since you already know everybody. We're solid.
Yeah.
So
Jeremy Pete, the city council president.
Captain Walker.
I'm Carl, you know me though.
I'm Megan Lancaster. Casey Bund.
I'm Jordan Weaver, city manager.
Jeff Caprati, city recorder. Yeah, hey Tyler.
he's the money guy.
He's a real back there cracking
Already
numbers right now.
All right, Jordan. Yeah, so I'm happy to introduce them, but also happy just to hand it over to PC and Megan to do the presentation here on what the Pool Exploratory Task Force has been doing for the last few months, and making a lot of exciting progress. I do want to thank the subcommittee too, the council subcommittee, Don and Carl and Kathleen and all their work in kind of shepherding this, and Jeff's help too in staffing this committee. Offices as a consultant as well. And they've been meeting quite a lot actually in working with the consultants and working with the council subcommittee on looking at these different options that they were charged with in regards to the pool and the future of aquatics in Sandy. So I'm excited to kind of hear the progress report. I know the rest of the council as well, and kind of what they have here in the next month or two as they kind of bring their charge to a close and bring forward recommendations to the city council. So I'm going to hand it off to the chair and vice chair to roll through a nice presentation.
All right, like I'm Casey. I've been around Sandy for a long time, lived here my whole life. Grew up with aquatics through high school, through college, and then still now involved in different things. And so I think that's a part of my driving forces. I want to give people the same opportunities that I had. Also, I have 3 small children that I'd like to have the same opportunities that others have had through Sandy.
And my name's Megan again. I've been a resident of the Sandy Boring area my entire life. My family grew up in Boring, and I moved to Sandy when my husband and I bought my husband's childhood home in 2013. So we kind of came back. We both graduated from Sandy High School. Like Casey, has been a fan of the pool and a user of the pool ever since I was a little kid, learned to swim at the center. And I'm here on the task force because I also have 2 young kids, and it's unfair that they don't have a safe place to learn how to swim in a community that's surrounded by water. So that's why I was here.
All right, so here's a roster, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's okay.
We're on real fast.
Well,
There we go. Yep, there it is.
There we go. Yeah. So it's not just Casey and I. We have a whole bunch of people, including some of the counselors that are here tonight, obviously, that help support the effort. and are also helping kind of lead us through the process, which has been incredibly helpful. I think the interesting thing is everybody really comes to the task force with a different background, variety of interests, and also reasons for wanting to join the task force as well. So it's a pretty diverse group, but a really, I think, powerful group of folks. So,
Yeah, oh, sorry. Next was our process that we kind of started out back at the beginning. We've had a couple meetings and revised and gone down some different paths. And so now we're where we're at, what we're gonna go through today. And then next month we'll have a meeting with some of the advisors to our group. And then hopefully by the end of January, we'll have a report to give to you with our suggestion or our hopes.
So like Casey said, when we first got together, there was a whole bunch of, as you guys know, right? Like there's a whole bunch of information for us to digest. And part of that initial meeting was to really obviously digest all of the information and the kind of pre-work that's happened, but then we also wanted to put together some guiding principles to drive our work forward. And so you can see them here, and you obviously accommodate lap and rest. I don't have to read through all of them because you guys can see them. But our intention is really to be able to work through these together, following the guidelines really set forth by the council in terms of, you know, the goals that we were trying to accomplish, obviously choosing between the different options and then a lot of things that kind of backfill into that. I think these kind of have changed a little bit as we've been meeting because we identified, you know, maybe one direction wasn't necessarily what we thought as we learned more. So I think this is kind of an evolving guiding principles for the task force, but something that we believe in.
If you don't mind, what budget, what do you guys mean by work within budget constraints? Do you mean as far as like a budget, it's in your exploratory process or the actual construction of the pool? What are we referring to?
Yeah. I think secondary
Okay.
is really that, you know, is that we want to make sure that, I mean, we know that our aquatic center, and Casey can probably speak to this better than I can, but it's probably not going to be a huge revenue driver for us, just the aquatic center by itself. But we want to make sure that it's fiscally responsible,
Yeah. Realistic.
realistic. Yeah.
And just, you know, the point of that question was, as you go along, please do be communicating any budget constraints you have in your process, right?
thank you.
As far as moving forward. Yeah. Want to help out.
So we visited the pool back this summer and found that it
Yeah.
had gone downhill a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So this first picture, you can see that there's some backwash from the filters on the ground where there's the corrosion in the pipes coming out. And then picture in the diving well, there's a window that's leaking and the pipes you can tell are a bit dilapidated. The boiler is from, I
think it's 1966.
66,
Yeah.
67.
Picture 1966.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some more seepage, I guess. It's not really a leak, I don't think, around where the gutter system is. Skimmer, again, just important parts of the pool that have degraded beyond repair. And so, oh, and then there's what's the chlorine mechanical stuff.
Just for a minute. One of the members of this committee was a director of the facility for ARPA. Yeah, for 20 somewhat years since I've now. It was very interesting to see his take as he walked through. So it doesn't get around to it, got him around. Just to watch, get his take on some of these things. Because I was expecting him to be more of, you know, to get it back, but he was pretty realistic about his assessment of where we're at too.
So after touring the pool, we talked about what our potential facility might look like and what some features we would want for the community were. And so here's a picture of what, I don't remember what this one was.
this is,
Furstenberg?
yeah, this
Yeah.
is one of the ones in Washington.
Right. So we looked at some different tools and things that might fit our need and kind of came up with a list and edited the list and then talked some more about it in future further editing. And so we came up with some ideas that we thought would really benefit the community.
Both in terms of like features, like what in an ideal situation, like what would it incorporate, but also from a programming perspective, what types of activities would be important to the community. Also based on like, different comps we had looked at from other markets.
So, some more of those. Yeah.
So one question I had, have you guys toured the Madras facility? Or are you familiar with
I've
that?
been there before, yeah.
Yeah, and so at first glance, and I'd only been there once, it kind of just reminded me of that. I was curious as far as, and you would definitely answer this, but as far as like competition and different, like the sports aspects to it, like we're looking at this, it's hard for me to visualize how that's gonna work in like a competitive swim type environment.
Well, I'm sorry, this
Yeah.
pool that we're looking at right now, there isn't like a competition section in this pool. Was there another section to it? Do you remember on this
I
one?
don't know that Furstenberg has a
I'm just
competition.
sure about this one.
Because Madras, now tell me something, Madras kind of does.
No,
right?
Madras
It looks
has
like this
both.
and then has like a different section. to
Right.
it,
Yeah, they have a
Right.
much smaller rec pool and then a large competition pool.
But the competition pool, and this is just off memory, feels much smaller than what we currently have in Sandy, or,
In Madras?
yeah.
We're gonna talk more about.
Oh, are you?
the
Okay.
competition side.
I was thinking
It's,
it's-
well,
yeah.
Sandy's 25 yards by 25 meters.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, is yards, so it'd be like 2/3 of our pool.
Okay.
It wouldn't have that extra section, L shape.
L shape.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah. Do you want to go over this one?
Sure, yeah, so the 4 options that were presented to us as part of the task force, the first option was to build a recommendation around is it viable to really do a long-term renovation of the existing structure, right? You guys are so familiar with all of this. And after, the touring the facility and looking at what are the ideal needs probably of the community and what's been successful in other markets, other cities, the idea that we have the 25-yard by 25-meter pool, like Casey was talking about, in the existing wading pool, doesn't give us an opportunity to have that recreational component. So that, plus kind of, all of the things that Casey had shared, makes us believe that this isn't necessarily our most viable option. So we kind of eliminated this one from the options. And then I can do this one, you do the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so option 2A was to reconfigure the existing facility. We talked at length, I think, with the task force and then also with the consultant. This option is a great idea, is a great option, but through the, I would say, analysis that we did of some other pools, the idea of a 2,000 square foot of water recreation pool is actually really small and doesn't accommodate all of the features that we feel like would be necessary to be able to actually have it be a meaningful, like long-term asset to the community. And spa, hot tub, everybody likes that.
Just before you go from 2A, I just want to point out, one of the learnings that I think as a team we did, the difference between a competition pool and the recreation water, the reason they're separate is the different temperatures. We don't always think about it that way, but ideally.
When you have different depths.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember the cold water.
exactly.
Yeah.
And 2B is just added more to the recreation area there.
So using the current facility.
Right.
Yeah, that dashed line is basically an extension off the back.
Off the back of the building.
Okay,
Just trying to use the big hole.
use the shell.
What's the word they call it?
Never heard.
Natatorium.
Natatorium. I had to learn a new word. What's it?
That's an old. So you're using the shell, but you're reconfiguring.
It's reconfigured,
With an addition.
it's pushed out.
New
But it
systems and
uses-
stuff, yeah.
The layout is actually utilizing part of the whole.
There's a lot of space back on that.
Yes.
There is.
So we're still exploring this option in partnership with the consultants. As part of our next meeting is we'll be digging into more deeply, like what would this look like and some cost options, I think, so.
You would need like 3 systems, right? Because I feel like I'm looking at 3 different water temperatures with the spa in there.
I'm not sure how, like, I mean, the spa isn't like super huge, so I don't know if that's like a huge like undertaking.
Right.
The other 2 for sure.
And that option, reusing the building, that's all new infrastructure.
Mhm.
Right? But all those things that were, all the existing water treatment
Oh,
gone,
right.
replaced. New 88 facilities, new.
It's just maintaining the 4 walls to the
Pretty much,
foundation,
right,
to the end of the building, and then everything inside.
pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
New pipes in
Almost
the
utility.
shell,
Yes,
new pipes in the shell then too.
new pipes, everywhere. yeah.
Very little is now in the building that can be reused. It's just, said earlier, so much of it is, it's terrible shape. It has gone downhill since we stopped using it. Financially, though, we don't know if this is a great alternative economically or. losing.
Yeah, do we have like price, like general price differences between existing and new?
That's a good question. That was one of our questions to the consultants is I mean, you look at like the reusing, I look at the reusing idea and I think that would be less expensive, but we asked them directly and they weren't able to confirm that. So they were gonna go back and do some analysis.
They're working on it right now.
Yeah.
I think, can we talk about what is 3,500 square feet? Why that over 2,000? Because that was a lot of the early discussion. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I think we talked about, it would just can you go back to the, do you have any of the other pools or just that one? It's okay, just pull up the
Yeah.
original one. So we talked about space in a rec pool, and if you look right there, people are like all spread out throughout it, so you need more space because people are spread out. It's not like in a competition pool where you're, going back and forth sharing a lane. It's everyone's kind of spread out in it. So when we talked about that, right? Is that when we
Yeah.
decided to up it, that we're like, well, maybe this isn't very realistic if we are hoping for a lot of community use.
Yeah, the
And
rent,
wasn't the range something like 2,000 to 5,000 for typical rec pools?
And there was one comp that we had looked at that was like closer to the 2,000 square foot, and their feedback was like, we wish we would have built bigger. And so we don't want, what we keep hearing from the consultants is, and it's so true, like you can't build a bigger pool once you build a pool. So you want to look at future state and what's going to be accommodating your future state for the next, 20, 30 years.
the other thing that comes into play is that the rec pool, because it's got the warmer waters where you do the swimming lessons for the little kids. And so, again, having kind of the rec play area plus this, swimming lessons and all that, it's important to have something large enough to accommodate. Whereas in the comp pool, you can't, it's pretty cold and it's much deeper, so you don't have the ability to have swim lessons there. Something like that.
Yeah, do you guys know roughly what the dimensions of these pools are
The
in feet or in?
rec pools are like, the one that
So like
they're kind of
3,500
touring it,
square
it's
feet
like
of water, how big is that?
3,600.
I think it can vary in a rec pool because the depth can,
Sure.
you know what I mean?
That
Like
makes sense,
if
yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
zero entry to, I don't know. if
5
we're-
feet or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
and if we're talking for a larger, deeper area for like, water
Water
aerobics and
slide
lessons
or- yeah.
or water slide stuff, like
You'd have to have
it
like
varies
10
pretty
feet probably.
greatly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, that makes sense.
So is this 35 square feet or
That's
3,500
feet.
square or cubic
That's
feet?
not cubic, that's square. So that's surface.
It's just surface. Okay, yeah, I just want to make that point because it doesn't matter the depth.
Right. That'd be
Yeah,
Those are
that's
still
surface.
being determined, and
Right.
what depths you go will affect the ultimate cost and maintenance cost as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's the maintenance I'm trying to think through.
Yeah,
So the
so-
cost obviously costs a lot more, but so the ongoing expenses, is you have more water
They'll cost
to treat,
per gallon.
whatever, right? Maybe more lifeguard duties because you have more space to protect. But other than that, I mean, it's a really, what am I not thinking of? There's really not that much more ongoing expense other than that.
pools.
The amount of water that you have to maintain is a big deal. Right? We were talking about the difference of that pool between 6 and 8 lane.
Yeah.
It's $100,000 a year.
Is that right? Are you serious?
Oh, yeah,
I guess I can see it.
it's a lot of water. So there are some things you just have to kind of look at it. We're hoping to get a very inexpensive alternative.
So
And
that's,
then something
so
bigger.
that's
than
why
that.
like in Camas, I know you guys aren't talking about this, but in Camas, they had dreams of like an Olympic sized pool. That's where that stuff gets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And what we're trying to do is ask the consultants to kind of, price out, 3,600 square foot rec pool versus a competition, 6-lane competition pool. And, that the 6-lane is, probably a need, and then a want is 8-lane or something. And then, so then they can show you what the trade-off is. And we're gonna need to be making those kind of trade-offs when we look at the whole package. But we're trying to get those kind of more itemized,
So
general
you guys are
estimates.
figuring out like the other schools, what do they have as far as laying
Yeah.
off rates
Mhm.
and all
Yeah,
that?
I want to make sure
Yeah.
we give these guys time to get
Yeah.
through.
We currently have a system.
And then we're gonna, then we're gonna
Yeah.
switch to the second half, where we're gonna
6
go
and
into
6.
some of this again, so I just don't wanna.
We're getting close to the
Yeah.
end of our slides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so this is another configuration where we have to look somewhere else on the campus.
Whole new pool.
And talk through the differences.
Or
of-
somewhere else in town, right?
Either or.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it second half, but can you guys talk about the difference in what new buys you versus rebuild? Because there are some changes.
I mean, the layout's much better on the new pool. In the old pool, you come straight out from the locker rooms and hit the competition pool right away using the old, where the old pool was, which is concerning for smaller kids, right? If you're running out there right there in the deeper pool.
What kids running around?
Yeah. Also, like if there's
So,
competitions going on, getting hit, like,
Sure.
But if it's a huge, like, if it's, the cost is that much greater, like, I don't know, there's ways around that.
Mitigations that you can. do.
Right.
It really looks at ideally, what could you do versus how do you fit within the existing show?
Has there been any conversations about like an indoor outdoor with the mobility without, out, because the reason it's in my head is remember those first like things that Kim was going around doing. She had some outdoor swimming and some indoor, it was some of those conversations take place. You guys must have decided that just indoor makes the most sense.
I think we talked about, go ahead and talk about the garage doors and stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about something that like you would pull up, and allow for like an indoor-outdoor sort of experience. But I think part of the problem that we've talked from just like a programming perspective, when you have, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but like when you have access to outside and people are sunbathing, then there's like, that creates a problem for systems from like all of their,
Yeah,
the
contamination
sunscreen.
problems, right?
Exactly, so
Yeah.
it's more expensive to manage too.
Yeah, I said I wanted it back. I got shut down so fast. but told people-
The upkeep,
Well, I mean, you figure any pool you've ever been in your life, you want you to shower before you get in,
Right.
right? And shower. when you
Well,
get out.
I'm actually pretty insistent on the garage door thing. So you go to Matters, their whole view, how those windows opens up the whole pool atmosphere and stuff. Remember that? I mean,
Hang on.
okay, all right.
I don't think we've ruled it out, I think it's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, no,
all this is all conceptual.
Yeah,
you
the
know.
whole point of these guys coming, where are they at?
Yeah.
Check in. and
No, this
for
is
council
fantastic.
To give them new directions, what else do you want to see?
I think the upkeep on some of the outdoor stuff, because inevitably in Oregon to use it, we used the outdoor Mount Hood for coaching one year and when the bubble was down and it's cold and you can only get some diehard people out there.
Yeah.
Whereas an indoor pool, it's much more user friendly.
So just to be clear for our planning purposes, so the third option does not utilize any of the current pool.
Correct.
Well, or not, that's why I said for our planning, because that means
We're gonna give you some options.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
in the next half of the presentation. I hope you guys understand for that too.
Oh, no, I'm not, I gotta go. I'm sorry.
We'll give you an update later. They haven't seen the second half.
Buildings, I mean, the pool has some issues, but the building itself is pretty.
Some opportunities.
Yes.
So we're on track to report back to you.
Yep.
With our stated deadline, which I think is the end of January.
Okay. I guess I'm just confused. What's the second present?
The second presentation, we're going to talk about the overall community campus, including some potential site
Oh,
options for options 2B and some concepts there that are developing.
So any questions about what we've just gone through?
Oh, it's really good, you guys.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just say complimentary, the whole group. It's really been good to see how much they've stepped into it, jumped into it. We can look at the different types of pools that we have around the state and then other states. It's good. So I'm really pleased at how they've contributed. And from our side, we try to keep them on to just the pool question, which is what the January meeting. Kathleen, Don, and I are trying to also include as we go along here a parallel path of what to do with the parking units, which is intro for Don in the next 30 minutes. And we'll incorporate not only just the different alternatives of what in the old building, out of the old building, how that might look in terms of what we do in terms of community center that includes other facilities as well as.
So the final report should include at least a recommendation, maybe a recommendation of maybe a majority minority, whatever the final recommendations are, including those high-level costs to build, cost, and then a listing or identification of programs and program costs ongoing. So we have a pretty eyes open as far as anybody can estimate cost today. Perspective.
Best guess, just in your mind, because I realize we're still early in the process, so maybe this is the question. If you're talking about going out for a bond, what date are you looking at?
Date to build, just date to it.
You know me, that's how
Well,
I am.
Yeah, I think
Date to ask.
Oh, yeah, I mean, what, as far as like going out for a bond, where
So,
you looking at
So the
November,
answer-
you looking at next May?
so completely, see them shaking their heads, don't say anything, don't say anything, that's what they're saying. Don't say anything.
Yeah,
There's
We're
we're getting,
conversation.
Well, I realize there's a lot going into it, and it's not that I'm gonna hold you to anything.
no, we'll have an answer to that here in the next probably
Yeah.
30 to 40 days.
What we're driving to is to have the information delivered in the dates that we committed to the council. Actually, it's January for this task force. And for the community campus, we haven't made a commitment, but we're driving to assume
See, I
thereafter.
just made everybody really
I
uncomfortable.
like
When
it.
did COVID hit? March?
Yeah, March.
I just, it's because
Oh, yeah.
so it helps me think
Yeah.
about where we were at the last time.
Yeah, so the key is to drive as much information as we can to the first quarter of the year. But as far as decisions on what we do with that information, or even if that information is complete, yeah, you can only go as fast as you can.
Well, and part of the reason for my asking truly is just knowing that there's some other bonds in the works in this general community that will be coming up. So, you know, you're gonna be
Yeah,
potentially competing
I think,
for finances.
I think we're gonna have
I think the school may go.
Are they exploring?
I thought they were.
But they
I
were.
think it'll be an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
It'll be a Q1.
Yeah, and we don't need to take our time with it here. I just was asking for kind of a
Because
ballpark.
I think it is important to be strategic, even though it means.
Absolutely, and that's kind of.
But we're gonna have some of our cost drivers.
Yeah.
Here soon.
Well, that's the, yeah, so the data is the data.
Right.
That's
Oh,
independent of
absolutely.
how and when you go. So that's what we're collecting.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
And the offices have been very helpful. These guys are for, mentioned Grant's dad died early on, so he only participated early on. in this.
Got a job in Medford.
And then, you know, education and stuff. So
It's been great to have these guys on, you know, because I've learned so much about, you know, I mean, I took my kids to the pool and, you know, anecdotally,
Water polo, right?
but
Oh, notes. We've learned never to go into a public hot tub.
I could have told you that.
Especially,
That's not what I was asking.
Post-COVID world too. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so
You
much.
guys, this was
Thank you for your work.
Yeah,
on
thanks
the
for having
task
us.
force.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're really
Thanks,
excited
guys.
about what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and reconvene our work session. And our second half of our conversation we'll get to the aquatic subcommittee update, PowerPoint presentation.
All right, Jeff, you gonna share?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody click your right button so you can see it.
Yeah.
There you go. So we got a lot of slides to go through and some ideas. For me, they're exciting. A lot of this is, I think the key point for everything that we're really going to talk through is that it's very preliminary. It's very ideas and concepts, but we wanted to check in. We want to get some feedback. We want to maybe even build some excitement. And also because some of those options that we just saw, really, you look at them, you go, why that? Well, there's some why behind it, but we didn't want to draw the PETF into those discussions. So we just kind of left them in the dark. So option 2B is just hanging out there in the middle of nowhere, and 3 is in the middle of nowhere. Well, we're going to show you some somewheres now that they could be. And the reason for that is just keep them focused on the aquatic programs primarily, so that they could make an informed decision on its own. So if we can dive into what we're going to do today, slide 2, if you would, we're going to go through basically looking at could we expand the work that we're starting here to broaden it and talk about what that might look like. We're going to talk about what is a community campus from the concept, what might you have in the community center. We're going to talk about that integration. Like I said, it's first look. Then we're going to talk about proposal. We're going to talk about the other stakeholder groups. I mean, we've got the pool now well represented, but there's others. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then whatever direction you want to give us at any point in time, we're here to listen. So what might be in a community center? Lots of things that we've already talked about. A little more details than what were presented in the earlier presentation, but within the aquatics program, what maybe didn't get communicated, but the feedback I got from our consultant is it's a good sized set of pools. It gives you a lot of flexibility for features. It fits well with a community of our size. And so that's kind of what's under the aquatics program. But then let's look at the other things: group exercise rooms, conference rooms, multi-purpose senior, teens, and so forth. And of course, a gym, because now what we're going to talk about today is just a single court gym, but there's some limitations on space that we're dealing with. And so we'll talk more about that. Does that kind of ring true when you think about what you think about in a community center? Is that what you're looking for? You would expect to see, at least from a starting spot? Yeah. All right, let's
I want to emphasize that a lot of that information was from OPSIS about what you would typically see in a well put together community center. And Don mentioned that, but I want to make sure that it's not just a bunch of items thrown up on the wall. It was with some thinking about what would make sense in terms of the community our size. So I think that's kind of where I'm laying it. And there could be some add-ons,
absolutely
subtract offs. So one of the things you'll never see in there, I understand, having a diving board is verboten because of the risk of liability and all that sort of stuff. So some things were just taken off. We won't see them on there. But if you have questions, certainly fire away.
Yeah. I think of this as the beginning straw man of what will ultimately be in there. So we got to put something out there so we know what to add and subtract from it. And that's what the purpose of this list is for. And I should also point out what's not on here are the outdoor features that would be covered under the park side of this. So deliberately excluded from this list. Also want to credit OPSIS right now. They've really gone above and beyond what we asked them to do. And I think they're hungry to make good on what that first report was. And so they've provided a lot of additional information we're going to go through here. They've met with our committee twice, and it's been very helpful, very informative both times. And their thinking pushed my thinking to new areas, things that I had not considered. They pushed me out of my old comfort zone and into new ideas. And I love consultants who do that, will challenge me and make me think. So All right, biggest challenge, the first one that I really hadn't thought about is parking. When we put a facility that's big enough to house all those things together, code demands so many, for that square footage, you get so many parking spots and you gotta put them somewhere. We have challenges with the geography and the elevation change on that site that make it kind of challenging on where and what you can do. If you notice the parking lot, you're sitting at about that 963 is the elevation. I want to point
Right here.
My mouse won't work on that slide.
I have my cursor on.
Thanks, Jeff, sorry. So you start at that parking lot about 963, which itself is down from the street level because it drops down from Pleasant Street. But then by the time you get to the back of the middle school, you're at 950. So that 13 foot of change and the back of the what's the bunker building is even lower than that. You could drop all the way down to that 930 level. So there's a big elevation change. We have to fit enough parking spots. And so that's created a challenge. And so this is what's currently on the site. Some key opportunities that I think though are equally important to look at when we're looking at the site is that direct access from downtown all the way down to the park behind it and ultimately down to the trails and to the Sandy River. Right now it's disconnected, but when we re-envision this, it could all be just continuous. So build out that Pleasant Street master plan and then just continue that walkability all the way down to the river. The other good is really been identified before, but the bunker building has good bones. Or once again, OPSIS has reconfirmed that. We'll talk more about it. They look at it. They actually have run some numbers to say which buildings have what kind of value, intrinsic value, and just how they are. And the bunker building has very high value. The middle school, very low. The gym, low. Surprisingly, the pool, very low. Very low. And they
Wait. When you, hold on, so what do you mean when you say that though?
meaning the cost to replace that building versus the what it's there. Just if you were to rebuild it, the cost in that building, the value of the building itself, the shell, is not very high. Because of what you'd have to do for the seismic upgrades and everything else to make it safe and modernized.
In other words, it's almost more cost effective to just start over.
Now,
It
they
may
did
well
say,
prove.
they
It
did
may well
say
prove
that
to be
there's
that.
a good opportunity to salvage some blue lamp beams and things like that to reuse.
Oh, sure, but
Which,
But surprisingly, I'm with you.
but Stan's
Mayor.
dream of turning it into the Beaverton hoop, right, where you can get a couple of
It might be
basketball
more
gyms
cost
or something.
effective to build new than to do that.
Okay,
Is
wow.
the initial takeaway from them based off just their assessed, when they
Mm-hmm.
looked at it, said, what's the value of this building?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have that in our report when we get our final numbers and put the report together. It'll assess that. But it was
And
surprising.
you
to me.
don't have proposed solutions to the parking challenge yet. You just have identified
We
it
do.
as a challenge.
Yeah,
Oh, you
let's go
do?
to the next
Okay,
slide.
Okay.
Because I see it as an opportunity, especially with the things that you just talked about with access to Pleasant Street and everything
Yep.
else, having parking.
So
Right.
OPSIS on their own, they've done some, these slides you're seeing from here on out are things they did on top of the contract that we've currently got with them. So this is freebies. This is a concept integrating that 2B. This was the reuse of the existing natatorium. And you can see now that, I think I misspoke earlier and I apologize. That we've got the existing natatorium, but the expansion, can you put over the expansion side? I said it expanded out the back. I lied, Lori. I apologize.
That's
It's
okay.
expanding out that's to
Out the
the
front?
south.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the
Okay.
front.
There's still room there.
The
But I'm
gym-
looking at, that's option two.
Option 2B is the expansion. So we're only looking at two options right now, which is 2B, which is the expanded pool, existing building, and 3, which is a new building. Both of these concepts we're going to show you utilize what was the bunker building in various ways or shape.
So I don't want to get ahead of you, but like where you have your basketball court in this photo.
Yes.
It's a pretty significant hillside right there.
It is, and that is one of the big challenges about this drawing is that you end up with that elevation change that I
Yeah.
described has to be accommodated for ADA. So you're talking about ramps, maybe
Right.
an
I mean,
elevator.
that's because that's a big hillside right there.
Yes. Yeah, you're going from that 963 down to 936. Your elevation change.
It took me a little bit, but I look at it in terms of alternative 2, A, B, and C, all those are basically in place. Build the building, use the building, try to make it work. And I think there's some value there in the old building. It may not be, certainly for me, the use of it as a pool, really have some questions about it. But I think that the old building does have some value and does have some potential, but so we're in this early business of
Totally.
looking back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
And trying to figure out what's going on. So think about 2 as in place. Pool is kind of in the same building that it is now, and then 3 is a brand new.
So that covered outdoor basketball gym, that's part of the grade school now, right? That's not part of what we own.
No, we own that. It's no longer covered.
It's tore down.
Yeah, that covered it.
only in my memories of.
So
Yeah.
that is what's behind the pool today.
Yeah.
It's just,
That's
it's
what's
just a
here.
pad.
So what would go there now in this proposal?
So
The
in this
locker rooms?
proposal,
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
'cause that's
this-
why I was like, put a basketball court. there.
well, and that is what's showing. So if you, the existing building, Jeff, if you can show that where that blue arrow comes in.
So you're expanding the pool into that area.
No, the pool expands south, so that the
pool
dash
expands
line.
The pool itself, actually, because they, like he just corrected himself. So now the pool expansion actually goes out the front.
And
It's a
No.
okay, let's back up. Let's just look at the pool now. Starting at the parking lot side of the pool, where the parking lot is.
Yeah.
That expansion comes north to where that, from that dotted line to the end,
Mhm.
to give us room for that larger recreation pool.
It's actually south.
Yeah,
It's okay.
The building south.
I'm
Yeah.
tracking. you,
It's the
though.
south.
okay.
I'm
It's
glad
okay.
you're tracking, because I'm not talking right.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm with you.
Now, what used to be out there was lobbies
Yeah,
and the check-in, and those have shifted now to the back, so you're now expanding those out to the back.
so
side.
you're expanding it
Both directions, yeah. So there's just nothing to be saved in the front part of that pool. The airflow's wrong, they're old, they're not ADA and so forth. So all that had to get rebuilt one way or the other. This way gives you your parking space, starts to create that integration back into the bunker building. Difficult with the elevations, but it's doable.
That last bullet statement, I just want to point that out, because that's, for me, we don't have these buildings necessarily connected. Those yellow corridors are not necessarily covered. And the whole, for me, the whole idea of having kind of this integrated front desk area, that we don't have to have a separate community center and pool center lobby and all that, because the operation costs are what kill us with salaries. That's kind of where this one really, that last challenge presented by the separate buildings from an operational salaried, staffing standpoint is a concern to me.
This
Because of the
concept,
separate buildings?
Yes.
Yeah, because you have to have so many staff.
Right.
Yeah.
Each one of them.
or trying to figure out how to enclose them and do all the ramps and everything else creates, it's a set of obstacles that they can be overcome, but it's just.
So your
gonna take some work.
public-private partnership with parking, I'm guessing that involves like local businesses who utilize.
So that's a concept they put in there. We haven't really talked through it. What's important right now is that square footage for parking is not quite sufficient. So it's a little on the low side, but it's the best we can do and still get a pool in there right now. So we'll still have to get creative about the additional spots or get a variance of just whatever it's going to take there.
Well, and we have parking planned in the parking too.
Sure. The point of the public-private partnership is that you are 12 feet down from the road level. So you could have a raised public-private partnership area on top of those stalls there. That's all they're calling it.
stand.
No, yeah,
Okay.
no, the more parking you have for those kinds of opportunities allows things like the Pleasant Street Master Plan to get a lot more flexible too.
Exactly.
And you have covered parking, and there's.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can get access would be one of those things we'd look at, from the covered parking up to the building that we're talking about.
If we
here.
switch parking down the hill and move things up, you end up with huge slopes for parking, and that's just not good. So they felt like this was a more viable parking solution.
The previous plan had terraced covered parking, which was very expensive.
Takes
That's
up a lot of
what got us
space
to
too.
63 million, honestly. And so
Yeah.
I really want us to kind of go forward. We have the, the concept and the possibility of doing this private-public, partnership thing, but I kind of want to just look at the community center, pool it by itself, and because that's going to be,
Yeah, we haven't
Challenging,
put
yeah.
any time on that. It's just, it's a dotted
It's just
line
there. Sure.
shot. Yeah.
potential.
Yeah, let's hit 3, because I think 3 gives us a lot.
Potential, but I would just say, when you come to the end of this, you want to have those potential things as schematic out and as shovel ready as possible. In case you come across some available money in the future, we can start plugging it into different
Yes,
futuristic aspects of the plan.
yes,
Before we
absolutely.
move into 3, one of the things that we've been trying to push OPSIS to give us some financial consequences of these things, and we're not ready to do that yet, but the impression is, I'm getting is that 2B, which is everything inside the existing, is a fairly expensive alternative.
It may not
I was
even,
hoping for a really inexpensive alternative and kind of an expensive one, maybe one in between.
You
I
got
don't
two
know.
expensive ones,
Yeah,
an
but
expensive and a more
Yeah.
expensive.
What's telling you to be so expensive, Carl? What was it?
a lot of that is the fact that we've got to do so much work with the buildings. Everything's got to come down. The reconstruction of the natatorium, the pool area, there's a lot of work to be done there. There's so much, especially with the pool itself. The shell of the pool is really in sad shape.
So-
And it's just that and the fact that we have some
yeah,
parking issues that make this thing real difficult to put together. That gym down in the very bottom, there's a lot of digging going on there. So to me, they won't give us numbers yet, which I can understand because they haven't
but let's,
worked them out yet, but
and
they're saying this is going to be an expensive one as well.
and numbers right now are impossible to quote, given, right, a lot of uncertainty, but from our guidance, when we started this engagement with the pool people, with offices, we said, we don't want 63 million. How about 30? So we just kind of gave them a target to play with, and that's, we haven't adjusted from that to this point. So we don't know any different, but we just threw one out there. Just to make sure that we didn't end up with a $60 million.
Yeah.
So in option 3, this is now an opportunity now to relook at, well, what if you keep the bunker and you build everything else around the bunker? Just change the whole thing up. And so this is kind of exciting because it gives you that option to lay out whatever pool you want to. And we okay over
Good.
there? And
Leave that out on the record.
And so you can see now, the whole open area is now parking, it's below elevation. And we're going to walk in through some concepts of what some potential, what might it look like? Now, these slides that you're about to see are first blush OPSIS. We have contributed nothing to them. They don't include Sandy style elements, but it gives you an idea of, to me, the kind of what does this layout actually mean from a workability and an excitement perspective. And before I leave this, I want to, that red line, that's that access all the way down to the park now
Yeah.
that you can create. And you could also do it on the other side because we have a right of way down the end of Smith Avenue. So you could do it either side or both sides to create that access.
And what we're trying to do here is, we were trying to take it, when y'all walked, we did that tour through the bunker building, which we have to come up with a better name for it, but whatever.
Yeah, we don't want to call it that anymore.
Yeah, but the idea that, we could be using that, for the community center and other aspects and stuff, and building onto that rather, is our effort to try to kind of save money and, because just remodeling inside that and then adding on to that was our approach here.
OPSIS doubled down on the bunker building in terms of saying it's safe, it's solid. Their engineering suggests that it can have a third story put on it.
But to go taller.
Yeah, so we can, so
Three-story.
this, what we're gonna show you is a 3-story version of the bunker board building, so the third story is built on it. And it's opened up for additional windows as well, which is also something that they confirm that they can do.
So you get the pool is now where it's
Just
below.
let's follow. Let's drop in and come back, Mayor, if you're good with that.
It's the white rectangle.
We're gonna go to 3D.
I guess, yeah.
We're gonna go to
Alright.
3D.
Right?
All right. So now, these are those concepts. So on your left is the pool. The back half, kind of the back right quadrant, that's all the old bunker building. The right front is going to be the new gym in this layout. Once again, just a concept, but we're just going to walk through these pretty quick. There's several slides and I want to hit them all if we can.
So you've added that third story, but you're actually coming in on the third floor.
Exactly. And that's one of the exciting things with that layers now, that we're still creating enough elevation at the top so that you can see it from the street. So you can create that, that visual excitement as well. but yet still working off
It's
the.
very modern for Sandy's.
Yeah.
It
Remember
is.
the-
It's not
I-
Sandy's style
slow-
yet.
This is free. City style, it's gonna cost you a little more. as we all know.
It's a good point.
Move
So,
on, we're going
so
to
moving on,
minutes.
so we get into this, now this is the side view looking from the grade school, you know, into the side. And you can see that first area is the pool area, the cutaway view of it, with some sort of sloped rope to accommodate the slides and the other tall activities that drop into the pool. You can see then the bunker building where it starts with the gray and working to that side. And you see that third story on the bunker building, including that walkout area that's conceptually out there for some indoor-outdoor access. Keep going. This is a view from the back, once again, looking towards Mount Hood.
And so, and what's on the far side?
Over here.
Yeah.
This is so that gray building you're looking at, the dark gray, that's all bunker building existing. And that third
Right,
story,
but conceptually, what's going in there? The gym?
But no, it's
No,
like the
that-
community.
that would be your community center, multi-purpose rooms, teen rooms, senior
Meeting
centers,
rooms.
a kitchen, you know, these sort of things that would be associated with your community center. In
And
the
this would actually
front-
be looking back to the fields, right? It would be looking
Yeah.
toward the.
Yeah, if you were standing on that deck, looking
Yeah.
out, you'd be
Yeah.
looking out over the valley.
Right.
And that's what's exciting about that view is you would have an unblocked view of the valley from up there.
And that's a room you could rent out for events and stuff and have that deck and.
The retirement party.
Okay. Keep,
Look at the front.
yep.
Look at the front.
Yeah, we're good.
That's exciting.
So this is another view of the back swinging around a little bit. So now you're looking back, you see the sandy grade in the far right. Okay. And it doesn't look, those are not rooftop gardens. That's the parking lot you're looking at. The rendering is just the same
And I'm
texture.
looking at Sandy Grades, the other building. So
Yeah,
that's the Sandy grade
Grade
school. And that's, keep going one more, get around to the front. So here's your front view coming in. And we're gonna do 2 or 3 of these as we're gonna kind of walk down the drop-off area. And so let's go to the next one. And I love to think about that with Sandy style, some big timber beams or some A-frames, you know, built into there. As you're coming in now, he's coming out, this particular person, but as you were walking towards this person on your right, dropping down, that's the gym. Let's go on to the next slide. On your left is the pool. So the pool is fairly open from the road and so forth. And you have this integrated, and so you're walking in, you're seeing things on both sides. Now let's keep going. A little redundant, but I thought they were exciting.
The good concept of what you're gonna be seeing when you walk in.
Right. So
And think of lots of glass, think of lots of open views toward the north, being able to see this really nice looking building and to affect really a large reception area that controls everything.
Yep.
When you walk in.
that single entrance. You can see the 2 pools kind of indicated here. The pool shapes and sizes all be figured out. There'll be slides and other things going on in there. It won't just be a big old empty thing. All right, let's go. Is there one more? Yeah, more. That's the wimpiest slide ever. That's not the one we're getting. And then I think this is the last one.
Yep.
From the front, some sort of park area, but that trail that's going off to the left, that's that trail that path that would just go all the way down to the rest of the community campus. All right, so I'm going to try to go real quick because we're way out of time, but Ops has been real positive on this. They've really pushed our thinking. They've done some nice things. They've been working with the PETF really well. The relationship's been good. I have no complaints about this engagement with OPSIS. I did not support the earlier report. I thought it was terrible. So far, I'm very pleased with what they're doing. So you can read through those. The biggest value that they would give to us right now is getting to a faster decision. If we move forward with OPSIS and decide to extend their current contract, we have an old contract, we can extend it to get additional consulting to basically flesh out these concepts and help us bring back a report for this integrated center that matches the PETF's pool-centric numbers. So we have the operating cost, the construction cost, the usability, Sandy style, you know, better renderings and things like that. We can get to a decision much faster. or a decision-ready point. So to me, that's a value as opposed to if we go out for an RFQ and start with a new vendor, we're gonna add 2-3 months to the process. There's just no way around it. Next slide. We know we've got a bunch of additional stakeholders we've got to engage. A lot of opportunities there with Rochelle coming on.
Is Rochelle online?
And
Okay, good.
the challenge here is we can extend this OPSIS account contract to do some of that engagement. If we use things that are not council appointed. So if we reuse like focus groups and other things, entities to engage them and bring them, we could integrate that feedback. We've already got a lot of community data now, but we could refresh it, enhance it, bring it back to a larger proposal, and so forth. Well, I'm really rushing. Last one. So part of this update was to see if we're barking up the right tree, and also to see if how the council feels about adding to that, extending that contract out.
What's the cost?
Do we know the number yet?
Early number was 80. I think this existing contract was 40.
That's right.
For
The
the,
PETF was
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
And so this is.
So
a
we're already
new-
40 in, and this would be another 80 on top of it.
Well, it depends how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
We're more than 440 on the second.
I
iteration.
recognize that. I'm just saying, just
Yeah.
in this process alone, we're 40 in, and then that would be another 80.
Well, how much was the first time?
Oh, gee.
I think it was 100 and
189.
170,
Okay,
180.
because that helps me in comparison, right? So we got like at this beginning to end kind of full report at 180, and now a continuation at 80, kind of. So that's what we're. I
Well,
guess
all
second
told,
iteration
including the
at 80.
PETF, it would be 120.
All right.
Right.
Sure.
I did not think that OPSIS, sorry, OPSIS, if you're listening, was the best alternative for us to use, go forward. There were lots of things that happened during that first plan that I was struggling with a lot, that never were, in my mind, really resolved very well. Listening to us and responding to us was one of those, which makes me concerned. But really quickly, ditto on what Don said about having to redo with a brand new consultant, getting them all up to speed, getting them to be put back onto a contract. It's going to have quite a bit of time.
Mhm.
And then we have to start thinking about when we're going to put this puppy in front of the people.
So,
And there's lots of conversations about what that is.
so then my next question is this: if we decide as a body, and I would agree with the conclusions of the group, that the existing pool is a no-go, right? It's beyond repair, it's not worth salvaging. Can we shut that system totally down? Because we have money going to that right now for operation costs, even though I know it's not a lot, but it is
Mhm.
a bit. So that would be money that could go toward this, correct?
But that's not, but I would normally be totally with you. I just.
You can disagree with me.
No, what I mean on that point is because the second plan isn't a total abandonment of the pool though.
No, but it's an abandonment of all of the guts. So like one of the
Oh, right
decisions
about
that we
that.
made when we
That's
shut the
true.
pool down was we had to continue to
Yeah,
heat
yeah.
it,
What about
right?
the bowl? Does it
Because-
abandon the bowls too?
But those are going away anyway, because the configuration of the new pool is completely
So
different.
we should, before we decide that, we should
Um,
definitely talk to the consultant because they.
No,
may
no,
need
no,
the
I'm not-
weight- they
I'm
may
not
need the
saying-
weight of the water.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we decide that. I'm just iterating that it's an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
To get some funds.
So there is one little concern about that, and that's that politically speaking, we would need to make sure that the public sees our evaluation of the fact that we can't use this existing building, which everybody was thinking, myself included, that that was the cheap side of going forward. Using the existing pool, modifying it, cleaning it up, moving forward. We need to evaluate that. And removing all those features of it prior to making sure that evaluation is correct, but be hard to explain.
But by January, we would have that report.
Sure.
So
Well, yeah, so I guess my question was, so moving ahead with OPSIS, you get a plan back in January. And that plan's gonna have cost drivers, like the differences or kind of the cost drivers between the different options. As well as kind of possible revenue drivers as well, as far as you know, recreational pools drive this kind of revenue versus,
So let me be
yeah,
clear. So January, you have the pool piece.
Yeah.
That's what officers will provide in January. This contract could go out into May. When we're talking about to do the more extended community campus. with
Yeah, we
the pool
don't
integrated.
know that. I don't,
That's the earliest date that CIS is thinking it might go. all the way to May.
is that
So-
true?
Just got this today. We
So-
can,
Well, because where I come from, and this is kind of, you know, I got on this to kind of focus in on the park part of it and the community center part of it. And I was somewhat interested in the pool. And so what I, you know, kind of, these guys have heard the analogies, so they're sick of it. But the analogy that I have is that, you know, this is like a three-legged stool here. And we've got the pool, the community center, and the parks and trails part of it. And we've kind of done quite a bit of work on developing the leg with the pool. But we've been kind of waiting for Rochelle to come and really help us drive these other two legs. We've got the Parks and Trails Master Plan now
Right.
done that really helped flesh out, but still needs some more work with Rochelle's oversight, the Parks and Trails part of it. But the key part that was really left lacking was this whole community center and really kind of trying to come together with, you know, what do we want? We can't have another 63 million thing. So everybody's needs to pare down and really focus on what we can really do with a reasonable price tag. So looking at, you know, so where I'm coming from is I feel like in the next, you know, 2 to 3 months, we should be able to put those together with the pool and the parks and trails part of it. And, you know, provide that, you know, OPSIS will be involved in that and they can kind of then come back with a lot. I think they have a lot of this data already.
Well,
as
and
far
that's,
as the-
that's
Well,
kind of, that's
kinda
kind of
my
one of the
problem.
things that I guess really, if I'm being transparent and honest, that kind of bothers me. And that's that we spent almost $200,000 for original study
Yeah.
for a Taj
Money.
Mahal, right? For Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree with that. And now we're gonna give them another 120,000. Granted, we've already given them 40, but another 80 on top of that to now give us a dumbed down vanilla version of what they've already done. That just doesn't sit very well. with
Yeah, you know,
me.
you and I are in the same, we have the same outlook on this. And the thing is that we own some of that. We did
I
not
don't
run that
disagree. I don't
progress.
disagree.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, nothing frustrates me than having to pay twice for something. And that's what I'm saying. They already have a lot of these costs because they already developed
Yeah.
for us once. And so talking about May, I don't see that needing to go that long. I think we need to kind of get something sooner than that so that we can kind of move forward. We're not looking to, you know, have blueprints or anything like that out of this process. And I guess I'm excited about, you know, putting up the whole 3 legs of the stool together to get something so we understand what the trade-offs are, what the operating costs are, and we can kind of move forward with that and get support for it.
Let me throw something.
Go ahead.
Do you want to jump in? Yeah, Jeremy, go ahead and jump.
I haven't spoken yet,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm very excited about this. I'm really ecstatic, actually, about what we saw here. Because from day one of when the pool was being closed down, and I ran the task force to save the pool and was never the idea of keeping the existing bones of that pool. Because what I saw is what you saw in here and what we saw up there, in my mind. And we had gone through a library rebuild of that building. And if we would have done it all over again, we would have just tore every wall down instead of keeping 2 walls and a ramp and everything else, right? You're working and making a lot of work, a lot more money, and everything else, and it's not what you want. Now we have to live with it for another 50 years. I've never been pleased with the existing building or the pool in that. So what I saw there is what I had always envisioned with it and with a gym. As you all know, I mean, it's not going to happen next month or this summer, but we definitely need to be encompassing that. And I know this is about a pool task force and that, but it's always about selling the other building, moving that and saving money by having the resources. What I saw there, I got really excited about the potential of what I guess in my mind was what I saw being able to be out of this facility. I agree with that Taj Mahal thing. That was, and we that were on council at the time weren't given the privilege to see all these things.
Right.
It was all in background. And I think what's different about this is we flipped it and we had at least 3 counselors helping be part of that. to help with that visionary part of it. That was not a great way of doing it, and that's where they got what got created. So I have no problem in moving forward in doing that. No, I don't like what we spent on it. That's the past. We can't just sit here and dwell on it. I want to go forward. I want to see something done. And I agree. If we can stop putting water in there, can we get a contract to bulldoze those buildings before it gets any more expensive? Because I've been asking for that for
Yeah.
8 years.
So we can stop eating.
Whatever it
everything
is.
else, yeah.
So I'm a little passionate, but I'm passionate in the excitement. So great job. And that's what I wanted to say.
So my concern is I'm really excited too. But my concern is kind of hearing stories from previous councils before I was even on council, right? And then maybe, and some of what Jeremy just said kind of makes me feel a little better, but you know, like having conversations with Carl and others where it's like, you know, we're looking at these renderings, we're getting very excited, you know, we're really pumped, we're hearing things like Jeremy, you know, and then here comes the price tag, right? And I guess where I'm a little worried is we've seen a couple of different real basic concepts, broad strokes at this thing, but now based off of these broad strokes, we're going to make a decision to go spend an additional, you know, $120,000+ And the only thing I ever heard on like price parameters is, you know, we communicated to them that we want a $35,000 plan. Now, I wasn't there when they came back with these. I mean, did they reiterate the point over and over and over again when they were presenting it? We stayed within your kind of your $35,000 scope.
They haven't,
35,000?
I'm sorry.
We didn't go that low.
Woo, that low, $35 million scope, or, because my big worry would be is that we say, yeah, let's go flesh this out.
no, we.
They come back in January and guess what? We got the Taj Mahal. We didn't even know it.
No,
right?
that's kind of where we
Every
started.
conversation,
Yeah.
every meeting with them,
Yeah.
we talk about that.
And that's what we started. We showed them the new Ben Larkspur one. That was 23 million.
Mhm.
27. And then we showed them the Furstenberg, which showed the pool thing, you know, that was like 31 million, I think. And so we're like, you know, I kind of told them, I said, I'll have what she's having, you know, to quote a movie, but,
Right,
you know, so they
but that's
know.
just the pool, right?
No, that's the
That's
Larkspur has
community centers.
the rec center and everything. Yeah, fitness center, all this stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
So
numbers are changing, costs.
Sure,
so
sure,
there's
sure, I
some
get that.
Well, in
variability.
the world, right?
Yeah,
But
daily, maybe
Mayor,
by the minute.
so the netting, so the incremental cost that we're talking about right now is 80,000. When the three of us started talking about the what if, we were thinking doubling the initial PETF, so we were thinking 40. So the 80 is more than we were thinking. We were thinking an extra 40 to get us to there would have been great. 80 is a bit more for sure.
And so at 80, what are we, I mean,
What do we gotta
we know the price structure. I mean, we're pretty close to knowing, you know, being able to put that against the tax rate to then get a proposal onto the ballot, or, I mean, what are we
What does
doing?
80 buy you?
Yeah.
So to Kathleen's point, these other legs are not completely fleshed out. And so you're buying OPSIS consultants to work with these various focus groups, Rochelle, others, to flesh out those programmatic elements, the space needs, and roll that into a capital cost model and also an operating cost model.
Just to piggyback on what Councilor Hutchinson just said, that's where some of that extra cost comes in, is working with those stakeholder groups, those focus, the meeting time. That's where you get some of that increase in costs.
The concern I have there is we have a lot of this. I mean, it's maybe it's stale.
Right.
But we have a lot of this.
Right.
With the Taj Mahal, and I think we can assume that there are some things that will change, but you know, not horrendous amount. So from my mind, I still struggle with using OPSIS as our next consultant again. But I think if we were to go somewhere else, it may very well be at the same price range, the 80 grand. I was hoping for the 40, but I think
But we
it'll
don't
also
know
be
that.
3 or 4 months. What do we do if we don't go OPSIS? I guess that's the question.
Well, I guess in my
There is
mind,
some time constraints in this one. You know, we got to be thinking about when are we going to go to the public release? If it's going to be a year from now, year from tomorrow, that's a big lift. I don't know if we can make that. thinking about the following year, maybe the year for that?
Well,
Where do we land on?
then
some
I
of
guess
those
my question to you guys, because you're on the task force, is this: if a year is too heavy of a lift, and I get that, I can completely see that, then what's 2 or 3 more months if we go out for bids?
There's some of that.
What's the, and maybe we save some money, maybe we don't, but maybe we do. And my other thing is that, for the past 2.5 years that I've been sitting in this seat, all I've heard is how dissatisfied everybody was with OPSIS. And so then I sit and go, well, then why are we giving them more money to do another study? So those are the things that just linger in my head.
Sure.
It's not that I don't want to move forward. I totally do. I'm in agreement with everybody else sitting here that this is very exciting, and thank you guys so much for the amount of work that you put into it. So those are just kind of some of my thoughts.
You and I are having the same thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, the way I've kind of rationalized it or whatever, gotten around it is that, once we get this, preliminary conceptual stuff with costs and stuff, then we have to go get public support, whatever that is. And then at that point is when we will be going out for an RFQ, RFP, whatever, to actually design, and that's where I see, that may not be OPSIS, it may be somebody else. So that's why I'm not getting too attached to these drawings, because in fact, it may look,
Post
So-
bond, post financing, yeah, that would be a totally different contract.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
yeah,
and
totally.
so
Yeah.
that's where I'm
I'm not even
excited.
thinking that far ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited that we're not married to, to this right now. If there was some frustration with it, I think they do realize we were not pleased, and they are kind of, again, we got all this stuff for free, and they are trying to up the game and stuff. So
This OPSIS experience has
Yeah.
been good.
Yeah.
I mean, the three of us,
Yeah.
I don't think we have any complaints about this experience.
So far, I have a suspicion that they never will go away, but to me, they have given us some tree stuff, which I'm very impressed by. They have been responsive, much more than they were the first time. I'm not sure how that all didn't get put in the first round one, but it certainly is a different option.
So Jordan, so what does the committee need from us today, right? Oh, because one is these probably need are we feeling good about OPSIS? But then the other is, that's a financial question to extend this contract. So we're in a work session, so we can't vote for something like that. So it's something that we need to forward onto a future city council meeting agenda, or what were you thinking on that?
Technically, we can do an amendment to the existing master plan contract. We had gone through that RFP process. This is still can be seen as, revising that master plan and working with the same firm as part of that master plan. So
You need council approval to do that though, right?
well,
Not really?
yeah, so it's 80,000 out of, 106, 170, what we paid already. It still falls within that scope of work. And what we really want to do is kind of do a check-in with, see if the rest of the council is comfortable moving forward. 80 is the first shot. We're still negotiating that scope of work and that contract, and we're getting this feedback. Big part of that expense is renderings, not just the public input and engagement, but a lot more architectural work to get it to a place where it may be bond ready. Takes renderings like you saw tonight, massings and sketches and stuff like that. But really the point of tonight is thumbs up. If the council's okay with that, we can execute an amendment to keep moving forward with OPSIS. As the counselor said, it saves, a couple, 2 to 3 months instead of going through an RFP process.
Where are you
with
gonna
this.
pay for it out of?
So what we've been paying so far with the pool task force has been with the money the budget committee and put into the aquatics fund.
Mhm.
That was only about 71,000, I think, and change, something like that.
Mhm.
So this first this separate contract that we did with OPSIS was 40,000. So that's coming from that source. We have this pot of money in urban renewal that is for the community campus. The bonds are sold for the campus, and we still have almost $3 million there. So I see it as a combination of using the remainder of the 71,000 plus urban renewal, since this is going towards.
And this can go towards the planning of it.
Yeah.
What's the pool and what is that building and the pool? What is that costing the city annually to
Because
sit?
I think it's like 200 grand.
Yeah, I think there
Yeah.
might be money in the budget that we set aside
Yeah.
to, if we shut the pool down in January. I think your point's held.
Yeah, not having to buy more chemicals and not keeping it heated to, it's pretty minimal. We've actually saved a lot by just,
Right.
I mean, if you.
But it's still like, if memory serves me, it was still 60, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, it was well over 100, maybe 200 a year,
yeah.
and to me, if we whittle that down, that means there's savings there. And then if we
Certainly.
stop that thing right January, say, that leaves us all of 22 savings.
I just want to be able to recoup that money.
Yes.
I think from my viewpoint, I'd like to hear and if their council's ready to kind of give their comments now, certainly through the whatever time frame that feels comfortable to you, but are we on the right track? Is the plan that you've seen, you kind of rough grades?
Oh, I think we
Look
all
good.
think you're on the right track. Yeah. I think the big consternation is,
The money.
doubling down.
Yes.
Doubling down on the money, which I think we all knew was coming eventually. It's just being at the moment of having to do that. And then the other is, there's only so many companies that do this, right? And OPSIS is despite our feelings about past work, they are a renowned company that does work like this.
They have a person in there that is the expert pool person, and he would probably be in not just OPSIS, but he'd probably be in any others that we were talking about.
So I
some of those
guess
people are
my
few and far
question,
between.
Don, is timing becomes really the decision here. Because if timing wasn't a factor, there's very little reason not to do due diligence and look around and see what's out there. So with timing, how raring are we to go to try to get this thing prepared for sooner than later ballot decisions?
I'd love to have the information available sooner. I think sooner it gives you options to go later. Having the data later does not give you an option to go sooner.
It's true.
You're juggling these same decisions and then COVID came.
Well, given that, to me, I'm comfortable moving forward. I'm comfortable moving forward, given that, but I do want to, when we shut those buildings down, I want to shut those buildings down as soon as we can. So.
And for me, it's a yes with, guys, like, watch this budget. Anything that was like, whoa, we just did that recently, push back. Let's be
Absolutely.
good stewards of taxpayer money here.
Yeah.
Because that's my big consternation.
Yep.
I'm good with going forward, and I think that I feel a lot better with what I've already heard. Because last time it was all driven by staff, no offense to staff, but staff kept the council out of it completely. And not having that and being part of that, I think is going to help OPSIS be better at being OPSIS and being able to give a better product. Does that make sense? Because the oversight's right there inside it. And because of that, I have no problem with OPSIS at all. I think they're a great company, just being led, not being given the information directly from what council was kind of desiring. I also would like it to go sooner than later because elections have consequences, and the fact that more people change it, and then I've been through this 3 or 4 times. No offense to anybody else, it's just someone changes, and they all have a different, want to see all the same things over again.
And the truth is, the anger about the closure of the pool,
Oh, yeah.
keeping some of that up is what helps a successful effort.
There's some momentum
Yeah.
we talked about.
Yeah, and the more we're closed, the further away we are from some of that energy.
But I agree, I think we need to stop paying for it, and the sooner we can, before costs keep going up, if that's the option we're going, let's tear it down, and so that's already done and already in the process to help speed the whole process up. Plus the costs keep rising. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay,
All right, proceed.
you have a very skeptical council over here for OPSIS, so you're gonna get lots.
Yes. So keep his eye on him.
Yes, and don't let all that take away from the excitement, because I think we
Oh, yeah.
do really, back what Jeremy said there. So that's all very exciting.
Oh,
stuff.
man. These pictures are just,
Yeah.
really turn me on. Like,
Yeah.
this is exciting.
They're awesome.
If you want to gain a lot of support, having that basketball court there right now, 'cause I know another counselor with a kid that's sending their kid to Estacada because there are no gyms
Yeah.
to play basketball.
That's where we really have to kind of look at those itemized costs and trade-offs as to, again, when we all went in the pool and what are the itemized costs of each one of those add-ons compared to the gym and the community center.
You're gonna get support by having that. Or everything else.
All right, with that, I'm gonna
Thanks.
close our work session. We'll reconvene our council meeting in 5 minutes at 7:30. Call our city council meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America.
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome. Per normal, I'll go ahead and start with a review of our council meeting this evening. We will start off with a presentation, really an introduction of our Parks and Rec and our new Parks and Rec Director, Rochelle. We'll then get into our consent agenda, which has our Sandy City Council meeting minutes from October 18th. Under resolutions, we do have a public hearing. I skipped totally over the public comment section, but we didn't have anybody sign up tonight, so it's
We
fine.
need roll call too.
We should do that afterwards.
I thought so.
Yeah, we're good. We're good, Jeremy, on that one. Resolution, we'll do our public hearing. That's when we'll have opportunities for public testimony for that resolution on the application for an advanced financed public improvement reimbursement area for Viewpoint subdivision. Under old business, we have our Highway 26 Vista Loop 10 Eyck pedestrian improvement project update, ARPA funds funding priorities, and then the legislative funding request priorities. Under new business, we have some Parks and Trail Advisory Board appointments. We'll have a report from our city manager, and then we'll round up the evening with our committee and council reports. Jeremy, not Jeremy. Jeff, I knew it was a J.
Yeah, I threw you off.
You threw me off. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilor Pietzold,
Here.
Councilor Smallwood,
Here.
Councilor Sheldon is absent, I believe.
Excuse.
Excuse, okay. Councilor Walker,
Here,
Councilor Exner,
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. With that, is there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda? All right, moving on, we've had nobody submit for public testimony either online or in person. So we'll move ahead to presentations or introduction of our new Parks and Rec Director, Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm have the pleasure, I'm very pleased to introduce Rochelle Anderholm-Parsch as our new Parks and Recreation Director. She's with us online and attending virtually. There she is. And in a minute, I'll hand it over her to say a few words of introduction. But I just wanted to talk about her just for a minute here and introduce her to the community and to the city council. She was the candidate that emerged out of a very rigorous process that involved city councilors and community panels. And we're just really pleased to have her join our team. She has well over 2 decades of experience with Parks and Recreation Management, most recently as the Aquatics and Recreation Manager for the city of Oregon City, I think since 2006. She's managed parks capital projects. She's revitalized their aquatics facility, and she's built a lot of different recreation programs there over the years. She has a master's of public administration, and she's a certified parks and recreation professional, as well as I think an aquatic facility operator too. So after that work session, a lot of skills that are going to be very useful for our city.
Yes.
As you probably, can sense, she's stepping into a role that has a lot of priorities for the city council and the community. And I know she's very excited about that. We just had, again, this work session about the community campus, and she'll be instrumental in bringing that forward. We have the task of reopening our senior center and starting those programs up. And she's taking the helm of a new department. I've converted the community services department to a parks and recreation department that's going to include parks maintenance, as well as our senior services, recreation, special events. So it's a very exciting time for the city of Sandy, and especially in the parks and recreation area. So we're very thrilled to have her starting. She's going to start next week on November 8th. And I know she's looking forward to it. It's already been coming into town and doing tours and meeting staff. We're just thrilled and looking forward to having her. Rochelle, I'll let you say a few words, introduce yourself if you come through okay here virtually, but it's great to see you.
Great. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening. Thank you, Council and Mayor, for the opportunity to introduce myself this evening. And yeah, I just want to let you know how excited I am to start this position. And I just was able to listen in on the work session on the task force. And yeah, very excited about that potential and helping move that forward, and just have received really, really warm welcome so far from the staff, and just appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to Monday and moving all these initiatives forward and working with everyone. So nice to meet you virtually, and I can't wait to meet people in person. So.
Well, welcome, Rochelle. I know I speak for all of us when we say we're really excited to have you be part of our team here at the City of Sandy, and had an opportunity to run into some of your old council members out in Oregon City, and they were all very sad to see you go, which makes us that much more excited to see you here. So welcome, and we're excited to see your progress as our new Parks and Rec Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Thanks, Rochelle. All right, moving ahead on our agenda, we're to our consent agenda of our City Council meeting minutes from October 18th. Unless there's discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilor Smallwood, a second by Councilor Exner, that we adopt our City Council meeting minutes, or our consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. With that, we'll move ahead to our resolution, to our public hearing. I will open this public hearing for resolution number 2021-30 at 7. I'm a little harder today.
That would hurt.
At 7:36 p.m. Jordan and then Mike for the staff report.
Yeah, so Mike's upstairs. I'll let him do the introduction to this. This is an advanced finance public improvement reimbursement for certain public improvements associated with the Viewpoint subdivision. I believe this is the first a hearing of this nature for the city council. And first in a few years, at least. I think there was a sewer reimbursement district that was a couple years ago.
That's right.
That the council had considered, but it's a kind of a rare occurrence. I think there's only been 6 that the city has adopted since this code was created back in the 90s. And I'm sure Mike will talk a little bit more of the history on that, and in particular this process and what this district would set up. And then of course there's the public hearing as part of that. Mike Walker, Public Works Director.
Thanks, Jordan. I did go back and look, and the last time the council approved one of these was for Jewelberry with the 4J Land Company, and that was in late 2013, early 2014. That was a pretty big one. There are a couple of hundred properties involved in that. But anyway, this is for the improvements associated with the Viewpoint subdivision, which is on the west side of Bluff, immediately north of Olson Street, just a little north of John Street Viewpoint. And you can see on the map that accompanies the staff report and the exhibit to the resolution. There's 2 smaller 6-unit subdivisions and some neighboring properties that would benefit from these improvements. And you'll notice the properties on the west side of 377th. Some of them have Olson Street addresses. Only portions of those properties are shown. One entire parcel property is shown, and portions of the others. These are actually much larger parcels. One's like a 4-acre parcel. One's like a 2.5-acre parcel. But only a tiny portion of each is within the area of benefit, and that's based on elevation. These are the portions of those properties that would drain to the sewer line or the storm drain line in what will eventually become Dreamcatcher Avenue / Southeast 377th. And you'll notice that the subdivision, the reason that these are offsite improvements is when this subdivision was approved, there were no sewer or storm drain lines adjacent to it. So the developer had to go offsite through 2 intervening properties and in order to make connections to existing utility lines. And it's those offsite improvements that will benefit other properties outside these 2 developments. And those, plus the street improvements on Olson Street, are the improvements that staff has determined are eligible for reimbursement upon connection by the intervening properties. We don't do these very often, as Jordan pointed out, but we do have a specific section in the code that deals with how we administer these, and that does make it a little easier. There's also a statutory provision in the Oregon Revised Statutes that's a little more vague process, and so it's good that we have our own process in the municipal code. And so in the staff report, we discuss the eligible costs, the potential dwelling units that would benefit from these improvements. And then since some of these parcels are large without a lot of street frontage, some of them are small with a large amount of street frontage, basing this on street frontage is probably not the most equitable way to do it. So we're proposing that the reimbursement be based on dwelling units. Fortunately, all the properties in the area benefit have this same zoning designation. So that makes it more equitable. And we base the methodology on a couple of assumptions. The properties inside and outside the city, they're all share the same zoning. And we also included the dwelling units in the developer subdivision in the calculations. We made an assumption that 20% of the gross undeveloped land area would be netted out for streets, easements, et cetera, when these adjacent properties develop. And then we assume that undeveloped properties would develop at about 80% of the maximum allowable density, which is pretty close to what you see most single-family residential properties develop out to. It's pretty rare that you can get 100% of the max density. And then the way we divide it up, there's a separate reimbursement amount for water improvements, sewer improvements, and storm drainage improvements, and street improvements. And so if you have a parcel that's outside the city, or a parcel that's only needs to connect to the sewer, if their on-site system failed, or only need to connect to the water if their well failed, but they didn't need to connect to the street system, then they would only pay for a water or sewer connection or whatever they needed. And if properties needed to connect to all three of the utilities as well as benefit from the street improvements, naturally they would pay the largest amount, and that's about $19,000 per property. And then kind of the question before, one of the discretionary things that the council has in front of them is the term of the reimbursement district. How long does it last? By statute and by city ordinance, the maximum term is 20 years. And then the city ordinance does allow interest to accrue on these reimbursement obligations. But again, the council can determine that this is entirely discretionary on the council's part. The council can determine whether or not to create the district at all. And if they do choose to create it, they can determine the term of the reimbursement obligations, and they can determine whether or not interest will accrue, and the interest rate that can accrue if they choose to accrue interest. And I think the interest rate is based on the rate in the master fee schedule, which Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong, is the same as the rate we get on our investments at the state's local government investment pool plus 1%. So that's kind of what we're talking about for interest rates if the council chooses to let these obligations accrue interest. And as I mentioned, this is an entirely discretionary on the council's part. This isn't like a local improvement district where it's subject to termination by, if you have a certain threshold of affected property owners voting against it, it doesn't matter. The council makes the final call. This hearing is really for information purposes only. And in addition, so after the, if the council adopts this resolution, then the next step would be for the city staff to develop an agreement with the property owner that kind of works out the nuts and bolts of how the reimbursement amounts are collected and returned to the developer. Again, I should point out that the city's not reimbursing the developer for these improvements with city funds. adjacent benefiting property owners would do so when building permits were issued. And the city merely acts as the agent to pass these funds through from the parcels that are obtaining building permits back to the developer. So I see that Tom Orth is in the audience tonight, and there may be some other people from the neighborhood in the audience as well. So if you want to take testimony and or have any questions of staff, I'd be glad to answer them.
Is there any questions for staff before we move forward to public testimony?
I have just one, because it's new to me. So when this assessment amount is calculated and it's per unit, I assume that's collected then as part of their fees when they do their permitting process. Is that correct?
Yes, when the code section says that the any reimbursement amounts are collected when a building permit is issued. So if there's a building permit for a sewer connection or a water connection or a driveway onto a street, that's when that permit is issued, these costs would be added to the permit costs. And the city would still collect systems development charges and things of that nature with the connection, but the portion, in addition to that, there'd be this reimbursement amount that would go back to the developer.
So
That's of our kind of collection costs.
So the second part, Mike, is that you do this based off a expected amount of units that would go there. What happens if you set up a 20-year term with that many units, but it gets rezoned down the road and we put up apartment complexes and other things? Does it cap out at the reimbursable amount, or does it potentially get applied to every unit thereafter?
It could never exceed the total eligible cost. If there were to be any rezones that created greater density out there, we'd have to go back through and kind of divide that, by those reimbursement amounts by the original density to come up with a new number. But it would never exceed the eligible cost for reimbursement.
Thank you.
I have a question. Although I'm not one of the oldest councilmen here in this body, but I do have a few years underneath my belt. When we did Jewelberry, I recall some of those folks who are within this district, that district, said they would never sell their property and develop and so on. So I was always wondering just how much the developer would get reimbursed. Can you kind of give me an idea how the Jewelberry one has been implemented? I know there's a few lots that have been planned and that kind of thing. And since it's what, been 6-7 years now? Remember how
It's been 7 years since that was created. Yeah, those most of those Sandy Bluff Annex later phases of that have been included in the reimbursement district. There's a couple of ones on either side of Jewelberry that would be included in that. As far as, but for the most part, when people say, I'm never going to develop, they're right. They rarely develop. So, most of the places that have not been converted to, that have been annexed into the city and have taken on the city's zoning, those have remained, they have not paid that reimbursement amount. And the notice we send out to the property owners kind of states that, if you're outside the city, if you have no intention to develop, this will probably never affect you. It only affects you if you connect. And it's really kind of an equity thing. I think the intent is not to, is really to just make sure nobody gets a free ride. If somebody spends their capital to put these improvements in and it benefits others, it's kind of an equity thing, that it's only fair that people pay a reasonable cost or their fair share of those costs, rather than just, thanks for extending this pipe in front of my house. Now I'll get rich and develop my property. So I think that's really the intent. And I think for the most part, the public understands that, and they realize the, concept behind it, that it's not fair to get a free ride off somebody else's capital.
All right. With that, we'll proceed to public testimony. Here's some directions. Please try to avoid repetition if someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. For those of you joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand at the appropriate time to indicate you would like to speak and wait to be recognized. If you're participating online, click the raised hand button at the appropriate time and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I will call on each person when it is their turn to speak. Each participant will receive up to 3 minutes to testify, and Jeff will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. Our council rules do require each person to state your name and address for the record. With that, I am now calling for any testimonies on the proposal. This would be, Tom, you can give your public testimony. Yeah, please. You have 3 minutes. Please remember to state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Tom Worth. My request for to talk, public comment was just to introduce myself and let you know I'd be available for any questions if you had any. I also wanted to thank staff and Mike for his efforts and compilation in the numbers that are before us tonight. I think that's it. So I'll just be available.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. With that, anyone else who would like to, in the audience, who'd like to provide public testimony, or if you're online, please raise your hand, or if you're on the telephone, dial *9. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm John Mahaffey, and I own a piece of property that's right across Olson called Marin's Viewpoint. And the Marin part, that's one of our granddaughters. So I want to make sure that doesn't get changed, the name. Now I want to compliment Kelly O'Neill and also I think it was Planning Commission. They granted an extension for me and we're running out of time to get it recorded. And it was back when the weather was nasty, and I think it was in February. And I went over to All County Surveyor's office, and Kelly came over in the snow. And I had to drive that over to Tigard, where there's somebody that gets it notarized, and then I had to run out to Oregon City to get it recorded. But Kelly came in that crummy weather, and then my windshield wiper broke. And I thought, okay, I don't care about it. It was scratching up the windshield, and I didn't care about that because I had to make the other appointment in Clackamas County. So I wanted to put that on record that he went way above to come over, get it, notarize it and everything. All I wanted, then another point I want to make, am I restricted to 3 minutes? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll be real quick. I don't know how the compilation went. I'm assuming Mike did it correctly, and I don't know if there would be other property owners that should be involved in that. And then the reimbursement aspect of it, I think that has to have some good thought on how that's accomplished. Yeah. I'll just take another minute. One thing that does bother me is the tree ordinance in Sandy, and it's not as atrocious as a neighboring city to the west by 15 or 20 miles. But I spend an inordinate amount of money and time trying to figure out which trees to save, which are trees that I own. And then this city staff person said, well, we won't count the wild cherry trees. So what happens there is, and I find out of frustration, just said, I'm going to, I'll just sign up and have to pay $3,000, which they didn't even know where the trees would be planted or where the $3,000 would go. And that's what I don't want to see. And I don't have any more property to develop in Sandy, but it's just something for you young folks to think about. If we get overburdened by regulations, and if you take the cost of what a home plus a lot would be, and if you imputed what costs would have been years ago and bring it up to today's value, the fees, regulations, charges, etc., amount to about 43% of that. That's huge. And we've got to stop. We've got to start thinking about that. And
30
how do we
seconds.
get those, how to get those costs down. And so I'll just leave it up to Mike, and Tom and I will probably work out something on this reimbursement. But thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure.
And just really think about how these costs keep escalating. And you're paying the same thing with that project you were just talking about earlier. You're subjected to the same sort of things. But if you think about, can you dial down those costs by that 43%, it really help affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. With that, reminder, if you're online, to raise your hand or telephone, dial *9. We'll give it a quick moment.
And Mayor, I do not see any raised hands.
All right, I'll call for the staff recap and recommendation.
Yeah, just to summarize, if there's any questions on how we arrived at the, which costs were eligible or how we arrived at the methodology, I'd be glad to answer those. But the staff feels this is the most equitable way to distribute these costs, given the fact that there's large undeveloped parcels, smaller parcels that are meet the density in the zoning district. And so the best way to do it, we feel, is on a per dwelling unit basis.
Is there any questions for the applicant before I call for a motion to close the public hearing? Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Make motion, we close the public hearing.
A motion by Counselor Peatsold, a second by Counselor Walker to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, discussion.
Well, I was in it when we did the Jewelberry one. Carl, I think you were on there as well. We learned a lot in there. The room was a lot more packed out back then, that's for sure. Maybe COVID and those things have come down, but it was a much bigger area that was represented in that there. I do look at it and go, there was a cost that was bared by, someone that put in the houses to oversize at the request of ours, so we don't have to rip up the streets and those type of things. And this mechanism seems to be a fair way. I have built 2 houses, and I do know that costs go up and every penny in those funds are there. But then I also realize, while being on council and planning commission and everything else, that there is true cost, and the developer that developed next to you that put in already the pipes and those types of things as well. And we don't want to have it get to a point where, someone gets a free ride on someone else's having to upsize that because they're the first ones in. So, I'm in support of, doing this. For the term, I know we've done 20 years in the past. I think it was for Jewelberry, and I think that would be a fair there. And I don't know, Mike, what was our percentage that we used for Jewelberry when we said for the inflation rate or the interest rate, I should say?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but the ordinance says that the interest rate shall be, if the council chooses to allow interest to accrue on these amounts, the interest rate is equal to the amount set by resolution of the city council, which is in the master fee schedule. And I believe what's in the master fee schedule is something to the effect of the finance director sets the interest rate, and it's based on the local government investment pool rate that the city's getting on its funds plus 1%. Tyler may have an idea what that LGIP rate is right now, so we can give him a total.
And did we put an interest rate on the Jewelberry?
We did. I do not recall what that was. I mean, it was a different environment in 2014 for interest rates, but I do not recall what it is off the top of my head.
Okay, we just didn't leave it as 0 though. So
I don't believe it was. I think the only one that the city council did not allow interest to accrue on was for a sewer extension in Vista Loop Drive, and that was in 2006. And I do recall that was unique because the council chose not to allow interest to accrue on these on those amounts. And really, it's just depends, I think, on the development environment. How some of these parcels we know will develop in the next 3 months, and some parcels may not for 10 years. So that's really kind of the guesswork involved on the interest rate.
Does this interest accrue from the point of this agreement until the building permit is issued for that thing? So if we saw large inflation in the next 10, 15 years, which could happen, these fees could become quite large then, correct?
Well, they would only, assuming the interest rate's going to be, in the 2 to 3% range, based on what we're getting at the investment pool. they would grow over time, but in the next year or two, that's not going to be a big chunk of money. But if the term that the council chooses is 20 years, 19 years from now, that could be a large amount of money.
Some of us all remember 10 and 15% interest,
It's 0.57 is their LTIP right now, so it'd be 1.57. Not making much money right now.
All right. Was there a motion? to
I'd
adopt?
be just
I'll go on the record, just say, because I'm one of your neighbors over there. And I think I've talked to Tom in the past, many years ago, over annexations and what was going on over there with 4J Lane Company. And I think that, I ran on a platform that development should pay for itself. And that's why I think this is a really, first of all, I love the houses that you've built. They're very nice and they're very respectful to the other neighbors. And I think this is a good example of how, developers are having to kind of build for the adjacent development, but it also allows them to kind of recoup the costs for doing that and not saddling the residents with those costs, the rest of the town residents. So I really appreciate you, making this work. And I think it's a good way to kind of get the development done in a way that doesn't saddle inordinate costs to all the rest of us. So thanks.
I agree that I think this is a good way to go about this thing. That's a way to make it fair in the long run. That I was going to make a move.
Do it.
I move to approve resolution 2021-30, creating an advanced finance public. We don't need to read this.
I think we're good at that.
you got to fill in the years to the interest.
Yeah, improvement reimbursement for certain public improvements associated with the Viewpoint subdivision for a term not to exceed 20 years. And direct staff to enter into an agreement with Tom Orth Construction to collect, track, and process reimbursement payments receiving from the benefiting properties. Unpaid reimbursements amounts shall accrue interest.
A second.
Second.
Motion by.
I- I'd like to modify
There's a
the
motion and a second. Did you have comment before I proceed?
I'd like to modify the motion
Okay.
to cap the interest, to add in addition to that, to cap the interest at 5%.
I have no problem with that. Seems like 1.5 is pretty low.
Future
It's a good
20
idea.
years.
How much does it increase each time? I'm sorry, I'm talking about data here now, but is it
Says the
attached to
unpaid
the,
reimbursement amount shall not accrue or shall accrue interest at the rate of 1.57% simply on interest until such time as the reimbursement obligation is satisfied. So I assume it's going to be 1.57 for the whole 20 years, isn't it?
It is typically fixed. That's usually how it's expressed in the agreement.
it is, okay.
It's fixed, yeah. So it's fixed at 1.57.
It's fixed. Do you want to retract your modified motion? Since it's
Yeah,
a
and
fixed
I
interest
do,
rate?
but the suggested motion language, should it include that interest rate then?
So it's the interest rate that starts off the whole process.
Yeah,
is where
it's a
it-
fixed rate.
Fixed for those 20 years.
As of for right now.
Okay,
Would-
I retract it. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
So
So there's a motion on the
and a
floor
second.
and by Counselor Exner, a second on the floor by Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
That was a lot shorter than the mini meetings of
Is that right?
Gilbert.
Oh, my. I remember.
I bet. With that, we'll proceed to old business, Highway 26 Vista Loop 10 Eyck
Yes.
pedestrian improvement project. Thank you, guys.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
I'm the one that's going to be impacted first, and I agree that Tom should be reimbursed because he brought in the sewer line, the water line across our property and somebody else's, and so I don't sit here and have anybody think that.
Right. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, no.
I'll get
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
I would also add that it's a win-win for all the property owners nearby because they paid the rates that we paid 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, right.
It's half price.
Yeah,
That's
right.
exactly right.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys. Have a good
Yeah.
evening.
Yes, dude.
All right, 10 Eyck pedestrian improvement project.
So speaking of costs.
The Exner sidewalk.
Yeah, we'll give you a shot at it.
That's right, it's extra sidewalk.
Oh, wait a minute now.
Actually like that.
I just bring the pictures. I just provide the pictures.
Pay more for.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Might go
It's
before
painful.
it becomes.
Yeah, I'll let Mike jump into this. This is it's an update, but it's a request. It is, as we talked about with the fund exchange program, that was the last action that the council did on this project, was to use authorize the fund exchange, the funds that we get through a block grant with that we then fund exchange with ODOT. We applied, I think, $650,000 towards that project at the time before it went to bid. So this was a few months ago. It went out to bid. The bids came back. And as we've seen over and over again, costs have gone up, and the bids came in above ODOT's engineer's estimate. And so per the IGA agreement that we have for this project, if the costs go over a certain percent, I think 110% of the engineer's estimate, then the city makes up that gap. So Mike will fill you in on the details, but it basically comes down to a gap of, we think, about $340,000. There's a couple items in the bid list that I think we can pull out to bring down the cost a little bit. And we think we have a method for how we can make up that gap. But ultimately, it's the council decision of whether it's a go or a no-go on proceeding with this project at this time. Mike, sorry for the long introduction there. I'll let you kind of fill in the gaps on the information about this.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. This has been kind of a long-lived project as well. This was submitted into the STIP in 2011 or 2012, I think, and that's when we developed the estimate. The ODOT took a long time to assign a project manager, and then they pulled that project manager, signed another one. And so it really, this process that, where the project was awarded funding in 2012 didn't really start until 2016. So, we lost a lot of ground cost-wise over that length of time. And then once the work did start, then costs were still pretty flat, but then now that once it went out to bid, it really escalated. And this is kind of, came in $400,000 over the estimate. And then after the bids were opened, ODOT came back to us and said, well, gee, it's going to cost another $548,000 in engineering costs for their staff or their consultants to observe the construction of these specialized retaining walls. And so the gap grew even more. And one thing that ODOT suggests is that we drop some conduit and junction boxes for pedestrian scale lighting that would have been installed along the sidewalk. So that can save about $210,000. So now the gap could be reduced to $340,000. That's kind of where we're at now. We did identify some sources of funding in the street fund. We could take, I think it was $116,000 out of the $124,000. We'll get another round of surface transportation block grant funding after January 1, 2022. It's going to be about $124,000. We can take that out and use that for the Bell Street project, take money from the Bell Street project, put it towards this project, and then take $216,000 from the street fund operations budget to make up the gap. So we've identified sources of funding that we have to make up the gap. It's just really up to the council whether they want to use those funds for this purpose. This has been the council's seen us come back several times, and every time it's like more money. But the council has indicated that this is a priority project for them. It would be nice to get rid of this sidewalk gap and provide a means for people east of Langenstein Road and on the north side of the highway to get into Sandy without, with the sidewalk instead of having to walk along the shoulder of the road. So we've kind of laid out the costs, how much the city spent to date. We spent about we've committed about $905,000 to date. We've only spent about $220,000 of that. if the project did not go forward, the money that we've committed but is unspent would return to us. Our total contribution towards the project would be about 1.245 million. The ODOT contribution towards the project is $2,834,000. So, we're contributing about 30% of the total project cost, and ODOT's contributing about 70% of the total project cost. So it's still a pretty good deal for the city, even though it's kind of disappointing that costs have escalated every time that's come before the council. When we did speak with ODOT staff in 2019, and they gave us the big jump, I believe the mayor and the city manager did visit with ODOT's regional manager, and we were able to secure about $1 million in additional funding, about $980,000 in additional funding for the project. And so we were looking pretty good then, but costs continued to rise. And if we do pin it down at this point, the message I think we would go back to ODOT with is we've continued to provide additional funding for this, but now that the bids are in, the costs are fixed, we don't want to have escalation with ODOT's project management expenses and have to come back again to the council for additional funding. And so that's kind of the message, if the council decides to proceed, that we would take back to ODOT.
So I haven't been able to get a hold of Ryan yet. Before just allocating money towards it, I would like to have another conversation with Ryan. Ryan's our regional contact at ODOT. I think that they'd be willing perhaps to put some more money towards this. As Mike mentioned, we did last time this was proposed, it was higher, but ODOT did cover that increase at that time. I do think that they need to be watching their expenses, what they're expending in their project management costs. This is an important project. I'll tell you, the reason I call it the Exner project is, our council was ready to really step away from this the last time. It just keeps blowing up, costs keep getting higher and higher. And Carl, had kind of a throwaway comment that he stays up at night thinking about families walking down, especially from those apartments there down to 7-Eleven in town during the daytime to do shopping, a lot of one vehicle households. And that's kind of what motivated me to call over to ODOT, and work to get a little extra money. And I think that still holds a lot of truth to it. And I keep bringing up transit availability over that area. It's not coming anytime soon. And so I think the project's important. I think it is for a lot of safety reasons and stuff. And we're this far, over 70% is being given to us by ODOT, which, these STIP programs are not easy to get approval on. They're highly competitive. So
this project was a council goal prior to me being on council.
Yeah.
So we had two goals that were really looked at when I stepped on council, and that was this project and a sidewalk down 211 down there. We fought hard back as 2011, 2012 at C4 to get on the STIP. As part of C4, we got it through. And then there's a funding issue nationally because the federal government hadn't funded the STIP, and it caught up to them. And so then they took a pause. But outside of that, my bigger complaint is, why is this taking so stinking long to do something? I mean, regardless of that, come back into it. The money should have been there. Like, I guess, Mike, if we were to move forward with this, when can they start building? Can they start building next month? That type of thing. Live is like, I don't want to mention any other federal government agencies that we know that are slow, but this is really slow. And with inflation, I do think it is important when coming from Vista Loop down middle of the night, it gets dark at night. So it's not really the middle of the night. It's, 6, 7 o'clock at night. It's dark, rainy, and here you got mom and kids in tow, walking down the side of the highway. And that's the reality for for a lot of families in that area for the last 20 years. So anyways, that's just kind of the backstory of it. But I guess, what's the rest of the timeline, Mike? If we say before, what else is it that ODOT needs to do before they can start pouring concrete?
The bids opened, 2 weeks ago, and the schedule is that, it takes about 90 days to go from bid opening to a contract. And so they're expecting to start work in March or April of 2022, and it would be completed by October of 2022. So it takes them a little while once the bids are open to actually fire it up. But they do expect, and most of this will be night work too. That's a reason for the big jump in the cost, is almost all the work will be done at night, because ODOT doesn't want to close a lane of traffic down in the busy summertime travel season during the day. So they want to, most of the work will be done in the evening, and that we are paying a premium for that. But I should have mentioned this in my staff report. ODOT needs to have an answer. They've got a timeline from the date they open bids to where they have to make a decision whether or not to award a contract. And so they do need to know, like, tomorrow what the council is. I think we can still go back to ODOT and ask for additional funding, like the mayor pointed out, or emphasize that we don't want their contract management and construction management costs to creep up over time, and the city's doesn't want to contribute any more to that. So I think if we go back with the idea that we would continue to seek additional funding, and emphasize ODOT how important it is to keep their costs in line, that the city's tapped out or doesn't intend to submit any more, contribute any more funding to this. It will start soon, but they do need to know soon as well.
So we mentioned the dark and the fact that, a lot of the year it's dark and we're eliminating all the conduit and the junction boxes. We've already eliminated the lighting. I'm not comfortable with that. I do like moving ahead with the project. I like the idea that we're getting, our money's leveraged, but I think getting rid of the conduit and the junction boxes, it seems like that's going to add cost. So the total cost for this project will go up just at a future date rather than now. So I'm uncomfortable cutting that at this point.
Well, and I'm gonna agree with the road that you're going down, because I have two concerns with this project at this point. One is, are they actually gonna start it? Right? We had this, I feel like we had the same conversation 2 years ago. Are they actually gonna start it, A? And then B, by the time it's ready to start, how much more is it gonna cost? How much more money are we gonna have to come up with?
I don't feel like the timelines really have been pushed here compared to what they said. The timeline for the project has, but I mean, from when ODOT was in here and we had that meeting.
I realize that, but we're still 2 years down the road, and here we are, they want more money. And I think every project that we've been involved with lately, once it's come down to shovel time, they've come back and said, well, now it's costing this much more. We all know that's going to be the case.
But these costs are based on bids they've already
Yeah, I was
received.
gonna say bids.
So
They're bids, though.
Yeah,
Right,
there
but
is,
they don't have the ability to kind of come back and.
Until they discover something that wasn't
Exactly.
right.
in the plan.
Yeah.
But
So, I mean, that's my concern with this project. I mean, I'm not denying that it's not a good project, but I have some concerns.
Well, I tell you, my frustration on this one goes beyond all kinds of pale. To see this thing come again and again for more money, more time. What are they doing over there? I mean, this has got to be almost an inconsequential project. It's only a couple, $3 million, I saw them do that piece over on DeBarco and 211 here, just snap it all out, and it was a couple $1 million. I'm really frustrated. I don't know, I had a couple pictures that I gave to Jeff. I don't know if they showed up in some of the data and all that, but there's more than a few times I've come to the Langen Sand and 26 stop sign, and look across and I see mama pushing a stroller and having the 5-year-old running back and forth on the highway, inches from cars. And right there at Langen Sand, there's a lot of times those cars are doing 50, 60 miles an hour. There's no 40 mile an hour. even though that's what our speed limit is. It just seems real frustrating, but this has always been a high priority for me. It's always been one of those things that I think is a crucial safety issue. We've got the low-income housing out here. It's about a mile or so of walking on this road that just seems to be just crucial to get done. I almost don't want to say it, but I really want to emphasize, Mike, if we do go forward, somebody's going to say the stake is in the ground. There is no movement at this point. I mean, you know, they're bids, but change orders come down the road, but they better say no. But you know, I do think, Don, I agree with you. If the poles and the lights themselves can't be put in and we can't afford that, let's put the junction boxes and the channels and the pipes and stuff in, so we can do something in the future. It is pretty dark. It is pretty dark.
I think that part of it, you know, this is like a half mile of sidewalk. And going from, you know, it's gone from a half mile of sidewalk, which shouldn't be that expensive, to being, you know, a half mile of a lighted walkway with retaining walls being done at night, which totally bumps up the cost and stuff. And I just feel like there's been all these incremental add-ons to the whole project that have blown the budget out of the water. And I understand the concern about lighting, but you know, we have sidewalks all over town that are not lighted. And this is going to get developed, you know, eventually we're going to have all the lighting that we have on the other end of town. You know, we have the sidewalk that goes from Fred Meyer's to, you know, all that. That's not all lighted up sidewalk. And so part of me feels like if you go for a walk at night at dark, you better have a flashlight or a headlamp, because it's just a smart thing to do. I think it's, you know, I guess if money was no object, I'd say put bollards lighting in there, but I do fear that we're kind of setting a standard for our sidewalks that I'm not really willing to kind of pay for down the line here. So I'm pretty mixed about the whole lighting thing, and I think we need to just get this done, frankly.
Yeah, in contrast to that, I don't see too much development happening. Maybe some houses will get tore down and put up. That's a pretty narrow piece of property before
Very
it gets
narrow.
steep.
Goes right down.
So those houses are probably those houses.
And the
I don't see us-
topography just makes it.
Yeah, it just makes it tough. So to see, and now I'd be likely with you, Kathleen, if that was the truth, where there'd be more development on the other side of the road, possibly, but I guess I'm still stuck in, let's put the infrastructure in the sidewalk so that if we have to, we can put it up at a much cheaper
So,
price in the
yeah,
future.
and remember, this is, you know, we're coming into Sandy. It's not just any sidewalk in Sandy. It is one that's going to be highly visible, part of our setting our style and who we are.
So, big picture, and it's been talked about, you know, STIP program, how long of a process it's been. I'll tell you, being on C4, talking about the money and the programs, it's like I said, it's competitive. It's not easy for smaller communities to get on, to get funded. And we're beyond that game. We're already on the list. We're already getting funded on that. I would also say that, you know, I don't like taking funds out of the street fund and stuff, but we're looking further down, you know, later in our agenda, we're talking about, you know, legislative funding requests and stuff, of Bell Street 362nd that will offset some of those street fund money that was going. I don't think now with the money that's flowing towards infrastructure projects, that this is a prudent time to step away from anything that's this far along, quite honestly. And I'm as ticked off as the next person, how long it's taken and the budget constraints, everything else. But I think we're far enough along. The impact of this project is to where it is. And with the money flowing in with infrastructure, I think the prudent decision is to move forward with this. And if that's where we are, then, you know, we should just with the timing, we should move forward. I'll make a commitment to this group that it will get a hold of Ryan tomorrow to have the conversation with them, to try to, you know, get the best, you know, deal that we can in it. But I'm feeling from council that this is just a project that's important enough and down the road enough that we should probably do it.
The only thing I would say is, and I didn't keep up with you, Mike, excuse me on this one, but it sounded like we were borrowing and paying from other projects and shuffling. I want to make sure we're not, especially in 362nd, that's so important. Yeah, don't want that to happen. 362nd, I heard brought up, and I really don't want that project to be shorted by any means. That's it's a whole different priority for me, but it's way up to this. And so the question I want to ask is are we taking money from a project that will be impacted and what risk not to be moved forward?
If we do not include the conduit and junction boxes for the future lighting, we would not be taking any money away from Bell 362nd. If we did do that, we'd either have to come out of the contingency in the operations budget or from the capital budget, and the only project in the capital budget in the street fund is Bell 362nd. On the lighting, I think we can look at something. There's existing PG poles out there. If that's a priority to light this intersection or light this walkway at some point in the future, it'd be relatively easy to install non-pedestrian scale lighting on those existing PG distribution poles. I think that could be done for a lot less cost, and we could program that into a capital budget in the future or seek out some other source of funding for that. But at this point, I think there's just too much uncertainty on the Bell 362nd project to devote any more funds out of the street fund to this project.
I don't want to put that 362nd into any kind of risk. That's pretty important to me, and I would think we'd want to do that. Could we do the lighting on those poles ourselves or with PGE rather than let ODOT get involved? I could just see.
Yeah, we
for $2 million and last another 20 more years.
Yes, we could just work directly with PG on installing lighting on their distribution poles, and it wouldn't have anything to do with ODOT.
So I'm feeling the sense from council to skip the lighting, but how are we on the conduit?
I don't, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this is gonna be a visible sidewalk from the highway as you're driving in.
For the most
It's
part, yeah.
Level with the
Right,
highway, yeah.
So because of that, I like the idea of pedestrian level lighting. I like the look, the feel as you're coming into town. You got tens of thousands of people driving through it every day.
Will it be level?
There'll be some below, but
Parts
there's gonna
of
be a
it,
lot of.
yeah, but a lot,
Still.
but
The
some of
key is
it's gonna
visible.
be like 4 feet or more below the highway.
Yeah, if it's
There'll be several sections of the same elevation as the highway. Even though
So is there ways to use ARPA funds for that? Because it's
Our
infrastructure.
next conversation, but
Right, I know it's the next conversation.
There
but-
is-
This is out of order, Jordan. This should be in a different.
I know.
know.
Certainly, with the general revenue replacement, but transportation on itself is not one of the categories.
Unless it spurs something.
Sure.
Yeah,
economic
I was thinking of the idea with illumination. I don't know if the district extends out this far, the urban renewal district, to capture that. I did want to add, we are planning giving a project update on 362nd at the next meeting because we did get the 60% bids on, or 60% engineer's estimate on that one. And just like this project, we're saying costs go up. So that's why we're being careful of not, breaking the piggy bank open on any one project right now, because we want to make sure that we can cobble enough together to keep moving forward on that project, because we know that's our major priority. As far my question actually for Mike is the illumination, back to the illumination, the pedestrian safety is a concern with the existing poles. We can usually capture some type of illumination. And what happens if we don't do the conduit now? Does it require tearing up any of that sidewalk, or is it easy to lay conduit or wiring after the fact down the road? Of course, things would be a lot more expensive at that time, but to Councilor Hokinson's point, does it forego that opportunity absolute, or can we someday come back and do some more of the pedestrian elements?
Yeah, it's always possible to go back and do pedestrian scale, lighting on bollards. But I think if we wanted to do something independent of the project, the most cost-effective option would be to put, street lighting on those PG distribution poles that would illuminate the roadway as well as the sidewalk at the same time. So there'd be a double benefit there. And it would probably be more cost effective to do it on the poles instead of the bollard lighting. The bollard lighting before we withdrew the lighting was 400,000. And the conduit and junction boxes for the lighting was 209,000. So, you know, so it's 610,000 to do the bollard lighting, probably more by now.
Mike makes a good point about the pole lighting, but if we do this, I mean, I don't want to see pole lighting, push 3, 4, 10 years down the road, even if with or without.
Yeah. We can start working on that today.
Yeah.
We work with
Because that,
PGE.
but you're right, this is where the entrance to our city coming west. They line up and they sit there and look at everything we see out there. Right now they're seeing blackberry bushes and everything else. They're like, but what, so it's the entrance from the other direction. We always talk about the entrance coming the other way. Really, it's the entrance of everyone coming home. And we see this, but the lighting itself, could go in today. It could have gone on 10 years ago. Just hope it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Not gonna cost 600 grand. That's my idea. And 10 years worth of getting it ready to go. So.
Well, we don't even know if PGE will allow us to put them on those poles, but we'll see. Those are high voltage poles.
So we go.
So it would cost 209,000 to include the wiring for future
Conduit.
Just conduit.
Yeah. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, that's for just the conduit and the junction boxes. It would include the lighting. The lighting was another $400,000 that was dropped even before the project went to bid.
The 200 grand would have to come out of the 362nd project.
Have to come out of the street fund and we're,
Which is.
There's
But if we could
contingency.
get the legislature.
That's
to
right. That's right.
backfill.
What do you guys want to do?
I don't want to lose any money out of that 362nd project.
That's what scares me.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose any money because I don't want to bank that we're going to get any funding from the state. you
It's
know?
just a project I'm not willing to gamble.
I don't want to gamble with it. So I'm okay moving forward with the sidewalk project, but I don't want to take any money out of the street fund to do it.
As is.
If we could do it other way, I would be pushing for it, but
Yeah.
otherwise I'm on your
So
side.
when I hate that these are sometimes recorded, but so when I make the call tomorrow, do you want me to push for for funding to go towards the project without conduit and
You can-
lighting, or do you want me to push? You know what I mean? Push for
I
lighting and
recommend-
conduit.
I recommend that we approve an amount that we're willing to go up to, and you negotiate
Yeah.
every feature you could put in the
Yeah.
sidewalk.
All right. So, all right, so what do we want to go up
Prepare
to?
yourselves in 6 months when they're back here asking us for more money.
Well, that's the thing. There's bids out there, so if we can get this thing.
Yeah.
Well, we're stuck with the 209 or whatever that was for the conduit, right? So there's
Yeah.
that.
So we're voting to authorize an increase of that 116 and 224. That's in the motion, right? That's what we're.
So I think we're responsible for 548 if you include the conduit and the wiring. If we remove those items, we're down to the gap of $340,000.
Right.
Either way, just to preview a future conversation, either way, we're going to have to come up with some creative options on 362nd, like we're doing now, like with ARPA funds or urban renewal, utility funds to pay for the utilities for that project, things like that. But every little amount in the street fund that could be put towards that project will be helpful. So a couple $100,000 more, instead of to this project, will go towards 362nd.
So how are you guys feeling about a motion not to exceed 340 or 350,000?
Yes.
So give it over.
Well, the way that the motion language reads is to commit the 116,000 from the capital budget, 124 from the street fund operations budget. So that's what, almost 340.
340.
But I'm hearing that we aren't ready to use that money anyways, and that we can backfill that out of the next year's budget.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to proceed with the Highway 26 Vista Loop 10 Pedestrian Improvement Project and direct staff to drop the lighting conduit and junction boxes from the project and commit 116,000 from the street fund capital budget and 224,000 from the street fund operations budget to make up the funding gap.
There's a second.
Second that.
There's a motion from Counselor Walker and a second from Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, I'll make the call tomorrow.
Don't let them increase the price, Mike.
Get us some.
Or something. We'll get it. We'll carry it.
We have Slurpees for everybody.
All right. ARPA funding priorities. Jordan and Tyler.
Yes, Tyler's joining me up here. You can read in this staff report, sort of what we have in store for you tonight. It's really coming back from our conversation in September. We had a work session about the American Rescue Plan Act and how much the city was going to receive and for the next, well, now and then a year from August. And council was helpful in developing priorities for the ARPA funds. And really, this is the next step in getting your authorization to start directing the funds. I think it's 1.2 million plus that we already received, and directing those funds to a number of programs and projects that the council had prioritized or identified through that work session. So Tyler's going to walk through those different programs and projects and how much is proposed for each one of those. Remember, this is just the first tranche of the funding, the funds that we've received already, and we do expect to get the second tranche in August of next year, an equal amount of 1.2 million, 1.26, something like that. Yeah. And so that really the council action tonight is getting your commitment on allocating those funds to those programs. I think our tactic here is to get that commitment and then come back with budget resolutions or a budget supplement when the actual amounts come in. That way we don't have to do some backwards accounting or another budget supplement if, you know, say a grant program doesn't let as much dollars as what we had transferred, or project costs come in lower, for example. And one of the other actions tonight is to appoint a subcommittee to then review and kind of set up the criteria for the small business and nonprofit recovery grants that are one of the ideas proposed. So Tyler, go ahead and take it away. Share screen here. Slides.
Thanks, Jordan. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Jordan indicated, the council had a work session on September 7th to talk about ARPA funds in general and allowable uses. Just a bit of background on ARPA, and I'll do this quickly. American Rescue Plan Act was passed in March of this year. The city is receiving in total just over 2.5 million, with 1.26 of that already received, and the other 1.26 will be received next fiscal year. And the funds can be used for eligible expenses incurred after March 3rd of this calendar year. The funds must be obligated before December 2024 and expended before 2026. And the eligible uses for these funds are split, generally speaking, into 4 categories: public health and economic impacts, which includes small business grants and things like that; premium pay for eligible workers; lost revenue for government services; and investments in infrastructure, which include water, sewer, and telecommunications or broadband. And during the September 7th work session, we presented, I believe, 7 different options. Council had a lengthy discussion about prioritizing those, and this list is sort of encompassing what was discussed at that meeting and a couple other minor tweaks. The first would be the very popular and successful covered structures program. I think all of you are at least familiar with what those look like, if not having sat underneath one of them for a meal recently. And to reimburse the urban renewal district, that would require $440,000 of these funds. The program itself was 80% paid for by the city and 20% the applicant's responsibility. So 440 would cover the entire 80% of the city share and leave that 20% still outstanding for a short-term loan with those businesses. The next category, we have proposed here is sandy net expansion. There's several sites throughout the city that don't currently have sandy net access. There's a map attached to the staff report that shows those various locations throughout town. If we were to extend sandy net fiber to those locations, our best estimate right now of cost is about $449,000. One of the council goals is to make and maintain sandy net, feasible as a utility and no longer require general fund support. And so continuing to build out that network to underserved areas and get higher take rate and increase revenue is also a great option with this proposed program. Next is business and nonprofit recovery grants. That was a high priority from the council during that last discussion. We've already done several rounds of business recovery grants with our CARES Act funding. This would be an extension of that program, but broadened a little bit to include some nonprofits throughout town as well. As Jordan indicated, we'd be looking to have council appoint a subcommittee to help flesh out the precise details of this program and review the applications. But staff envisions a program similar to the SSCP program, which was just presented to you last week, when there'd be a more thorough review of those applicants and a range in dollar amount of grants awarded, not just a flat amount that would be awarded to each applicant. And we have,
Hold up, sorry, and I
Yes.
know we're gonna put it to a committee, but but it's kind of envisioned as not having caps and more of like, apply and tell us what you want.
so as envisioned, we have a $10,000 cap, just to ensure that we could at least offer 10 grants.
10 grand's a good amount of
10
money.
grants is a good amount of money, just as a reminder that can be used for, really any business that had a negative impact due to COVID. So business closure, reduction in revenue. I foresee that to also encompass the current challenges that many businesses are seeing, retaining or hiring employees in general. And so we would, at least as presented, a grant application from $0 to $10,000 and sort of make your case. You need, $5 grand for some sort of hiring incentive. You need $6 grand for back rent payments. Tell us what you need.
The idea being instead of us telling them what they need, it's them telling us.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yep. And to have a little more, have the need of specific businesses met instead of just a flat $3,000 grant like we've done previously. Next on the list was the fat oil and grease program. There are several restaurants throughout town or businesses throughout town that don't have grease interceptors currently in place. And so this would allow for a $25 grant to approximately 20 restaurants or businesses to implement those needed infrastructure.
That's what those politicians in DC wanted. They wanted to fund the popular fat oil and grease program.
This received
Congress?
Yeah, that's Congress. That's right.
That's what comes from all the pork.
So I do have a question on the FOG program. Sorry, Kara, let me get it first. In regards to the $2,500 limit, given that we have this wastewater improvement and this has a direct impact on wastewater, does the cap make sense as opposed to need-based? If there's a big offender that costs 10 grand to fix, we should fix it.
Yeah, you'll notice that we didn't include a specific program outline for this one. So generally speaking, if the council wanted to allocate 50,000, we could absolutely.
But I just saw
implement
the
something.
cap on the per business, and I don't think we should have it capped. I need to or at least have a larger cap, because
Sure.
We've done a few of these. How much have they averaged in cost? And I know not everyone's gonna be the exact same, but there's gotta be an average, and we've been
sometimes you
doing
can solve
these.
it for a few $100s with an under sink thing, but.
Well, this one's more of.
Sometimes you gotta dig up the road.
Yeah, this is more of the digging in the road or behind, that I recall. The city's helped out on.
Mike, if you're still there, do you know?
Yeah, typically a large grease interceptor in a parking lot would be about $10,000. I think we only have 1 or 2 restaurants that don't have grease interceptors. And then the remainders are the ones like Councilor Hokinson referred to, a little under the sink thing or in the floor thing. And those are like, $1,500 to $2,000.
I agree. I feel like we moved the 2,500 and we probably allocated it correctly. Yeah.
Could have something not to exceed 10,000.
Sure.
Other as needed.
We'll evaluate it.
Some of these, if we're talking McDonald's or something like that, I'm like, they just need to Suck it up and get the.
I'm sure the
Don't
fast food
forget
restaurants
though,
already have
franchise
it,
owners, that's not like Ronald McDonald who owns that.
but it is affecting our sewer treatment
Yeah.
plant too,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean.
And we'll have an evaluation committee on this one, so.
We will on this one.
Wouldn't
We did not propose a review committee for that. We
Well-
wanted to, sort of streamline that process and if there
Staff
was a
wouldn't look
business
at
that
that and
was. Yeah. business that
evaluate
was
and
ready
say, well, yeah, staff will do that though.
Yeah, I think
That's why I said a committee.
No,
So the way it was set up too, and how much is that we have what, we guessed about 20 restaurants or so is on our list that, need an upgrade or don't have one. I mean, our goal would be to get them all, right? So use this as a really incentive to get those last remaining ones in place and,
Get the worst offenders first, though.
right, Mike, I don't know how many are at that $10,000 level versus the 2,000, because I think our hope was the intention, we get all of them with this funding, by working with them, and hopefully there's enough with the incentive, but if it's competitive, then I could see it, but otherwise, we're just trying to get them to do it,
So don't forget, this is a first iteration.
Yeah,
Yeah, the second.
absolutely. But because it does affect our wastewater and, that project affects everybody. Don't we have the teeth to tell these businesses that you will fix this? This is not an option.
It comes again about whether or not they can afford it. The big guys.
But if,
you
I mean,
bet.
if we're funding it, then it's, it's,
And that's why I want to see it.
Yeah.
Take that obstacle, because we're in code, we're talking about business
Yeah.
relief. I mean, let's
well,
not.
it's just when we start talking about language to me that, hey, we hope that they do it. It's like, no.
Right.
Well, we're giving them money. They're gonna do
Gonna
it.
do it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
But
carrot
if-
in the stick.
Yeah.
If we don't pay them and we just say they gotta do it, we may just close them down.
Yeah.
Which may be.
This needs to get.
Rather than not go that
Something to think
direction, because not knowing, you don't want to play favoritism in that aspect of it, but, I guess if you have a list, is this enough? And well, your list went away, the screen changed on me.
Oh, yeah, it's not on there anymore.
But, with the other one, you had in there business nonprofit grants, that's another business, could it there, but it's also getting a double whammy. I mean, it is helping that business out by putting that in there if we paid 100% of it, even through that process, right? We are better at saving money for our residents
Yeah.
and everybody else if we were to help use this to do that.
Absolutely.
So even if you brought that down 20,000 to get everybody, anyways, just an idea.
Okay.
Dollar amount, you're generally speaking comfortable with, but maybe the parameters of the program.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and if we had to, come up more to get these big offenders with the 10,000 fixes, I'd rather, it's taking it out
Let's
of
do it.
the non-recovery grants, because that's
We'll
also.
figure it out.
More money in the next year.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
This is a good example of why we're committing funds, but not doing resolutions right now, because if that changes to 60,000 or something based on the take rate of this program, that's an easy thing to adjust.
Definitely, let's see what happens, what comes out.
Next on the list was the special service contract program, and this was not brought up at the initial discussion of the workshop, but was a question that was asked during the SSCP program review. And there is one nonprofit that was awarded some funds, $19,000 in that round, Sandy Area Chamber of Commerce. And we think that about 50% of the businesses they'll help are Sandy businesses, which would be eligible for this. And so we're kind of reserving $10,000 to reimburse that SSCP program once we have a count on the number of businesses that were helped and the number of businesses that were helped that fall in city limits. So a little bit of a placeholder, but generally speaking, we're in that $10,000 area. And then last but definitely not least, revenue replacement. So we did the very fun, tedious calculation of how much lost revenue the feds believe we have using the measurements and benchmarks that they gave us. And it's a little over $500,000, which can be used for providing other government services. At this point in time, we're just looking at sort of filling in the gap between the 1.26 million of ARPA funds and the other programs, which would be 214,000. When the second tranche of funds comes in, we could absolutely take more of that for revenue replacement to use elsewhere.
So budgetarily, just talking, not priority wise, but just budget wise. I mean, unless we have areas in which we are really believing that we want to put the funds, it probably makes sense to try to replace as much revenue as we can because there's less restrictions from that pot, right? Like, so, get the money over there because that way we can we're a lot less constrained on where we can use it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that 214,000 in the short term could be utilized for gazebo or covered structures program that's outside of the urban renewal district. It can be used for other priorities of the council, for example, increased costs to acquire body cameras and dash cams. We had an initial cost estimate during the budget process, and there was some money allocated for that, but as is the theme tonight, costs have increased, and so there might be room for allocating additional funds for that program. Or, you know, any other sort of government service area that we see as a major need, homelessness and increasing mobility.
I like it, you guys.
Sidewalk lighting, 'cause we talked about
We
that
didn't mention
earlier.
sidewalk lighting
Yeah,
at the
because
time of the
otherwise
staff
it's not light.
report.
You get some homeless issues along the trip,
Yeah.
that sidewalk.
You don't get them anyway.
Plenty of needs, yeah, so a separate work session for the 214,000.
So you guys, so
I'm
just
good
to
with
get
this.
us moving along, one is thank you to staff for putting this together. I really feel heard, you know, as a council body, and you guys putting together this program, really appreciate it. I think we're good to move forward on it.
So then, oh, sorry, Mayor.
Well, I was just, do we have to?
Yeah, so I have one more slide, sort of wraps everything up. Next steps, so we would be requesting a motion to commit the ARPA funds as identified in the staff report. And then also identifying a council subcommittee to review and award the business and nonprofit grants. And then staff will follow up at a later date to actually do the resolutions to transfer the funds to the appropriate departments and funds.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion to commit the ARPA funds?
I'll make a motion to commit ARPA funds as identified in the staff report.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion from Counselor Small with a second from Counselor Hokinson to commit the ARPA funds as identified in the staff report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. As far as the subcommittee, the last, I think the last subcommittee pretty much works, except that I had Counselor Lee on there. It was Counselor Lee, it was you, Jeremy. Well, I'm gonna have to replace her.
And Carl.
And Carl,
Yes, right.
yeah.
Do we want to change it up a little bit?
Do we, yeah, well, that was kind of my
Because
question.
I've
to
done
you
it
guys.
twice,
Do you guys feel like you should change it up, or do you feel like we have a good working committee that kind of set priorities?
Does anyone else want to do it? I've chaired it twice.
Which one are we talking about?
This is just a subcommittee to allocate the small business grant program. I'm open for whoever wants to be on it. I would just, if we had a working committee that works, that's fine, but.
I would suggest you leave
Okay.
somebody
Well, I just-
on that's been there before, other than that.
Okay,
I'll do it.
There's a.
okay.
I think it's good to have other.
All right, yeah, so let's put Dawn, Kathleen and Carl on there.
Wait a minute, no, we already spent too much time together.
That's right.
That's the task.
We gotta watch
I mean, it could be efficient just to meet the same day.
I'll defer.
Yeah,
I didn't think
why
about
don't we kick Carl off and put Lori on there? You're off, Carl.
Okay, I'm
You're right.
busy on the
I
wastewater
can be off,
project.
it's no, it's fine.
Or there's Rich. Don't forget Rich. He doesn't get off without
We
a.
got three there. I think we're good on the three. Good.
So who do you decide?
So the three are Dawn, Lori, and Kathleen. And then we had two other people that was on that committee.
We did have some outside representatives as well.
The chamber was on it. And before we were using,
Well, we had Kurt McKnight on there, right?
we had Kurt McKnight.
Yes, that's right.
Shouldn't be on it if they're going to apply.
No, well, we had to have them on it because it was using their fund. And we also had Phil Schneider, right? Because it was the, we were using.
Oh, the urban renewal.
Urban
We
renewal.
were using urban renewal funds. That's what.
So that's why they were on it. But Phil wasn't, no, Phil wasn't on it, but there was the
I think we're a
chamber.
good committee of three right now, so.
And that was the first iteration. The second iteration was all general fund revenue or general fund. money.
We kept the same committee.
But we kept the same committee, yeah, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a different fund, so there's no.
So those are the three from council. I might sprinkle two more in, but let me think about it. Okay,
Great, cool. Thank you.
thank you. Huh?
I'm busy.
You're busy, is that you're saying?
I'm busy.
You would make quorum, man. You're not on there. You're off. Carl. All right, legislative funding request priorities.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll let Jeff take this one, actually. He put together the request that I don't think we included. We just did a staff report on what we think are the council's priorities here on seeking some additional legislative funds through the next session. You heard the PAC West study session. We had a great work session with them last month, and they gave us some advice, and we've been working with them on developing some requests and how that would play out and when we put it in, and what kind of funds we should go for. And I think what we've kind of narrowed our focus down is a couple of these key projects. One we talked a little bit about tonight, the 362nd Bell Street. Obviously, I think a great project for outside funding, given it has economic development potential, safety, connectivity, interacts with the state highway, and then on the water side, again, with the utilities being so critical, especially drinking water supply and our upcoming water treatment plant project. So sorry, Jeff, I did it again, right?
You took the thunder.
Yeah,
So what exactly was Jeff going to present?
How much are we asking for?
All right.
Take it away.
Thanks, Jordan. I mean, as you can see in the staff report,
Really appreciates the face.
362nd and Bell, obviously a huge priority. The number that we thought about for an ask there is 5 million. In the paragraph you can see there, and I think we'll talk more about it at the next meeting, Jordan, is that right? We're currently looking with the 60% design at 11.5 million. Costs are going up, as you know. So we thought 5 million was a reasonable amount. And then on the new water treatment plant, obviously to treat Bull Run water, we're looking at 1.1 for an ask. Obviously, as you've said, there's a lot of infrastructure funding coming down, and that's sort of the environment that we're in. So we thought that was a reasonable number. Well, you can see the benefits that we laid, the kind of the key talking points that we think that PAC West ought to really emphasize when they go to bat for us on this. And we think this is a good couple of projects, but obviously we want to get the council's sense whether you agree with this. Is there something else we're missing?
Well, yeah, I just saw a $36 million proposal. No, this is great.
I think on the key benefits for this is going to the state of Oregon.
Yes.
So on the key benefits there, we have economic development, resolution, housing. It's a buzzword for the state of Oregon. It will open up.
Increase housing, yeah.
Increase housing. If you want a buzzword in the state of Oregon.
For which one are you talking about?
362nd.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say New Water does too. But
Yeah.
But my point is.
I think you listed on everything. Go for all the.
Because that's what they want to hear. They keep changing our zoning. They keep changing everything we want. Well, let's push back and, hey, we put it on here. You
I
help
feel
us
like
get
there's
there.
climate resiliency in there too.
And when we talk about the transit integration with 362nd, talking about climate resiliency, yeah.
Why is it just 1.1 million seems really a low ask? I mean, is that because we already got the 14 million and we don't appear greedy, or?
This is new one.
For the other side.
We want to be able to have it back. I mean, because there is like with the 14.7, there's actually a process where I have to fill out forms and show how much work we've done and all that. Really, it's the design and engineering going into the project. That's how we can show that we're going to actually spend the funds. If we ask for the whole thing,
You're not buttoned up.
It's not shovel ready to go and do yet.
I'm just worried that
but we can
when
go
you
spend $1 million on
ask for the
design.
design costs, it's, they're gonna come in at 3 million or something like that, and then we're gonna,
Yeah.
I think this was also the sort of ballpark number they kind of suggested to us when PAC West was here.
Well, yeah, and I kind of think the 14 kind of works against us right now too on the second ask, because.
Okay.
Well, if they give us the money for the plan,
The 14.7 came from ARPA. and
Yeah, that's right, and this is lottery.
If we can get lottery funds for 362nd or even for
Yep.
the water.
That's right.
The other thing I forgot to mention is, we're also going to ask PAC West to identify any other, funding opportunities, financing tools, agency assistance, anything else that may exist for the, especially with 362nd prices going up. So
I think when PAC West talked, they talked about the importance of having a big one and a smaller one. So I think that's what you've implemented is to have those two asks ready for them to go after.
Yeah, and we have on the 362nd, I love having a shovel ready project with 6, with that, with all the details. Why do we pick the 5 versus 6 or 5 versus, with the cost going up? I'm just kind of curious on that.
I think we wanted to, again, show that we've committed, to pay for half of it already. We've sold bonds for the project. Initially, we had committed 3 million in street fund. And so this was really like the other half of the expense for the project. Because we already have the 5.4 million in the fund ready to go. So really kind of leveraging our own funds that, hey, we don't sold bonds. We're ready to go. This thing's shovel
Leverage
ready.
funds is important.
Yeah. Is there anything else on that whole Highway 26? Love to have some key factors in there, but resolving some congestion on, we have the bottleneck at Bluff and Highway 26, but there's just that congestion that you have between beginning of the couplet and 362nd that is going to be headed towards the high school. The other thing is I know it's not a bypass by any means or a safety bypass, but when we did, and we got grants for DeBarco to connect right around Bluff Road and that piece, we got grants because it was an alternative method around in case something right on Highway 26 happened. Does that make sense?
Emergency resilience.
Emergency resilience. And so I guess you have emergency access for routes from that north quadrant, but I'm talking about, see what I'm talking about? There, you get stuck there. And those were things that we won grants on. You guys have been wordsmith, you guys are much better at that, but that's additional things I was thinking about, like promoting for why this.
Yeah, it takes local trips off the highway, and the emergency resiliency, a good example of that was wildfires when this high school is going to be the staging area, right? But you have one way in and out, you got to go up and around.
So anyways, any of those type of things that, we know, I know the housing thing is a buzzword.
I was just gonna say, your first one was your best.
Yeah.
Okay. Housing was
Well,
mine, man.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop with the.
It's a minor nit, but when you talk about the significant traffic fall,
Yeah.
it's a regional traffic. So it's not just, so I wouldn't even put the Bluff Road part. It's Highway 26 through Sandy. Because it's interstate traffic. It's local, it's everything.
And on your facilitating access to schools, you could just add on to that it's also a safety issue, only having one means of egress out of that high school. Should any major incident happen there, it will be a mess. So.
Anyway.
Good job. Cool. All right.
Good job.
Do you need a motion for this one?
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion. I move to direct staff to submit legislative funding requests for a new water treatment plant and the extension of 362nd and Bell Street as recommended in the staff report.
Or a second.
I'll second
A
that.
motion by Counselor Walker, a second by Counselor Petzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, out of old business and into new business. Parks and Trails Advisory Board appointment should be easy.
Oh, You want to introduce her?
Yeah.
Oh, did you want me to?
Yeah. Tired of stealing people's thunder tonight, so.
Council Sarah Richardson, our recreation manager, is here tonight. I was not prepared to introduce this one, Sarah. I'm just going to throw it straight to you, Sarah.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Easy enough. I wanted to start by saying the Parks Board has had a really busy year, and to thank our current board members for all their time and effort, getting up to speed on so many different things. And we had 2 board members depart. They moved out of the area. So we had 2 vacant seats. And then we have 3 seats that expire at the end of December. So 5 total seats to address. We had a fair amount of interest. We had 8 initial applications that included the 3 current board members. 1 person ultimately dropped out, and the interview panel on October 14th interviewed all of the other 7 applicants. And I want to thank everybody that applied. I think it's great to see the interest. The panel's recommendations are in your report.
All right, well, thank you. We have a unanimous committee. So with that, I just want to thank you to everybody who applied for positions. And it sounds like we had some great candidates. With it, did anyone from the committee want to say anything about the process before we move to a vote?
I thought we had some really good candidates. The thing that I'm appreciating and am enjoying and watching is we've gone from when I started on with the Parks Board, we've gone from not being able to get people interested in being on the board. And now we have people that we're actually having to like not accept or turn away. And so that's a wonderful swing to the positive. We're also getting people who are interested in various facets of the Parks and Recreation. So, you know, we've got a good mix of individuals who have kind of different interests, which creates, I think, a really good team where you'll get some really good representation for everything, instead of having a group that's really focused on a single area. So, yeah, it's good.
Sarah, oh, sorry.
I'll just add that I really appreciate Sarah's effort in doing the recruiting. I think one of the things that helped us is that they advertised it on the reader board in front of the community center. And that's, you know, everybody reads that. Not everybody reads Facebook or all the other stuff that we try to get the word out. But I think that using our reader board for other openings on other commissions and stuff, it's probably a helpful way to get the word out. So thanks for all the work you did, Sarah, recruiting. And like Lori said, we had a great crop of folks, real diverse crew. So, and I really appreciate all the work that the departing board members put into helping us get the Parks and Trails Master Plan adopted. So kudos to them.
All right, is there a motion to?
I move to appoint Alexander Gale, Don Robertson, Stacy McMahon.
Okay.
And Will Todd Toogood to the Parks and Trails Advisory Board, recommending the staff report.
Is there a
I
second?
apologize that.
There's been a motion by Councillor Exeter and a second by Councillor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Again, thank you to everybody for stepping up and volunteering, and to our members of our selection committee for, I know that takes an extra evening out of your day. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes.
All right, with that, report from our city manager, Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to Clackamas County Bank and the Oregon Trail School District and the Sandy Fire District for the fireworks show on Friday night. I'm sure counselors will share their thoughts on it, but all the feedback that we've received has been really positive. So really successful show. And I think the weather really turned out for us this weekend too, which went in our favor too for the Saturday night Halloween hunt at the park here. I think it was the first annual event of this, an event for teens. And I think there was over 200 kids, or about 200 teens and that came to that event. So again, really successful. Folks are having a really good time. I think the parents really enjoyed having something to do for their kids. So thank you to our Parks and Rec staff, particularly Carol Cohen, again, putting together this event, and Rebecca from the library too helped out. So just a lot of kudos to them for making that happen. And then on more business stuff, the wastewater treatment plant, you saw the update on that. Some great progress happened this last week, and getting that some of the aeration basin improvements in service before we do the switch over today to Isley, back from Isley into Tickle Creek. And then great progress on the collection system side too. All the main lines in Basin 8 and 2 have been lined, and we just have some pipe bursting and private lateral work to go. I think we're on target for completion here in a month. Speaking of public works related items, the director recruitment is closed, and we have 5 candidates that will be interviewing by Zoom on 2 panels. So I have a couple counselors that will be helping out with that have been intimately involved with one project in particular. So thanks for helping and volunteering for that. That will be on the 9th. We'll do those interviews, and then similar process to what we did for Rochelle. We'll have some follow-up interviews with finalists. But yeah, really excited about that too. An important piece for the city and moving forward with coming retirement in that department. So yeah, that's it for me tonight. Thanks.
Thanks. Don.
You guys heard a lot from me, so fireworks are great, thanks, and good work, everybody.
Carl.
Couple things, my business participated in the trick or treat trail this past weekend, and we didn't quite hit 1,000, but we come darn close. And so I'd heard rumors of the library having well over 1,000, maybe close to 2. But anyway, really successful, a little cool, but no rain. So that was really good. Yeah. Saw lots of familiar faces. It's really one of those things that has just grown to be such a successful event. And I want to say thank you to the chamber for putting that on and keeping it going, and just lots of good things. One thing I was wondering, one of the problems when you put that many kids and parents, almost all of them have some sort of costume that makes it difficult for kids to see. There was a couple of inflated costumes. I was wondering if we shouldn't do something about warning our traffic through town. Lots of screeching, lots of sudden stops, and lots of backups and that kind of stuff. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't warn our traffic that goes through the town during that time next year.
We'll put Carl out with the street sign at one end of town.
Hit me instead. huh?
Stand at the
Yeah.
other.
Maybe you can word it later.
You can stand on that new sidewalk we'll have next year.
There was a dinosaur that the head was kind
Let's
of
go
flopping
scroll
over
by
a whole
those
bunch.
green things that say like kids at play.
Yeah.
How about that? Slow kids, right? Yes. A feature that came up just recently, and I apologize for the quick turnaround on it, but I put it out there for folks who have opportunity. On this Wednesday in the morning, I'm going to go down to the WES, that's the West County's wastewater treatment plant, and kind of make a quick tour through the plant again. That's an MBR plant. That's one of the things that we're planning on doing. If any of the newer council have not seen an MBR plant, I'd be welcome to carpool with me and go down there and take a look. And if you do that, you also get a chance to see they're putting art on the side of the building. So I get a 2 whammy here for me. I'm going to see some art and going to see a little bit.
Well,
they've done
you
some-
are on the art committee, so that makes sense.
I'm working on that. too,
He
by
is.
the way. I am the only art. Yeah. Let's see. Beyond that, I think that's it for that moment. We'll just go on.
Thank you, Carl. Kathleen.
Great job on the fireworks. Everybody put that together. Thanks, Tyler, for all the work you did. Of course, thanks to our sponsors at Clackamas County Bank and the high school for hosting us there. The trick or treat trail thing went really well, and I really appreciate Carol's effort to help make it special for the teens after dark. So that I heard that went very well. I think the library board report is that we're having a meeting here on Wednesday, and I think they're going to be involved because they do so many of these activities that they are obviously space constrained in the library. So they're going to be pretty involved in working with Rochelle and offices on the community center planning needs. And with that, I'm just so thrilled to have Rochelle here. I can't wait this 1 week. So I'm definitely going to buttonhole her for, a long meeting, kind of do a download on some, kind of thoughts I have about things. So I'm looking forward to seeing her really kind of tee up some projects here for us, because she's going to be critical for a lot of the things that we want to do. So, thanks.
I really don't have anything other than, just to add to great fireworks presentation. If, for those of you who don't have a good view of the fireworks, you're welcome to come to my house anytime. They're literally right behind my house.
I was worried about your house.
They're literally right behind my house. So, yeah, it's I've got a very good view. Other than that, yeah, it's great to see the trick or treat trail back, and kids out last night for Halloween. So it's exciting to see things kind of transitioning back to some sort of normalcy. That's all I got.
All right, this last week I was down in Ashland, Oregon at Oregon Connections. It's a great conference of telecommunication providers, broadband providers from all over Oregon. I moderated a panel that was filled with the OBAC, since I sit on OBAC, on that, and talking about policy. So it was riveting. It was the last presentation of the whole week, and people wanting to drive back to wherever. The room was packed, not really, but it was a great conversation because the state legislator, Pam Marsh, was there, who's leading broadband across the state of Oregon. It's really been very effective in the last couple of sessions, especially this last session with breaking down some of the red tape and barriers for that. But in that project, just the amount of funding that is coming out from the feds down to the states and how it's changed in the ways of being able to expand on broadband is just, it's hard to fathom in some ways. But the being ready and being and having your partners and those type of things, there's where it will be instrumental and for us too, if we're able to obtain those in the future. But yeah, it was just, I have to say, it's just great, coming, Sandy is recognized all over, but also in that venue too, when we talk about the pandemic and how people struggled in the pandemic and how our community is just did not have those same struggles with inside the city limits that had our fiber. So yeah, it was a great trip down, nice drive as well. Came right back to come back to the fireworks. And again, like everyone else said, just what a great time. Got back to see the third and fourth quarters of the game. And it was great to win. And I felt bad because I get up there and can't get in there, right? But I'm back at the Safeway parking lot. Man, people were so excited, like community members, like, this is the greatest community, here we are blowing the fireworks off, and I felt kind of bad. David Douglas were on their bus as they're driving away, as our fireworks are going off, like,
I feel like rubbing it in.
yeah, a little rubbing in, or you
Yeah.
just wait a while and enjoy the fireworks. But I think that could be something we do in the future. People ask, well, would you do it if we lost? I'm like, well, sure. And they're like, no, you can't. No, I'm like, no, why not? It's our community, but it was a roll of the dice, right? Because it could be like tonight, so maybe not the last game. Who knows? Whatever, we'll see. But that was pretty cool. Woke up the next morning to go judge the robotics tournament in Sandy. If you've never seen that, have any of you seen the robotics?
Yeah.
Have any of you judged it before? Don, so great, amazing. Oh my word, please volunteer. It was an all-day event. Said, oh, you can go now. And I stuck around for another hour and a half because it was just amazing. When we have amazing in Sandy, we always knew this. We hear about them going to worlds and nationals and everything. But yeah, so one of our teams took the Excellence Award, which is pretty hard to get. They were amazing. In the competition, there was another team and award that had something similar, was from Redmond, Washington. And who come, Redmond, Washington, you've got everyone from Microsoft to that, their clubs are, and here we are, right, it's great. And then our other team came down to be one of the tournament finalists in the actual competitions. And so it's not all about building a robot and doing this, it's the whole documentation in this. And what a venue for kids that maybe aren't the traditional a sports enthusiast or in that arena, but wow. There was 29 teams there, so that was quite a big, nice coming to our economy. And but the big one is in January, and I heard a lot about from other people there. They can't wait to come back in January. January is the big one in the state, which is held in Sandy. We've kind of known this in the past, but didn't really know how well. But 60 plus teams will be there at that one. Definitely, please, if you have any time, just swing in. It's just so being able to capitalize on that. COVID will obviously dictate whether that will happen or not at that type of people and teams, but really excited about that. And then just curiosity on the street sweepers, with the winds and the rains come down. They talked about my age, how long I've been on that, talked about running. when you run through all these leaves, I mean, you're.
As long as we hit them all, as long as we hit them all.
No, it just, and, you know, I fill up my yard every bin, but there's more that can fit in it 3 or 4 weeks after. And I know we don't have our own street sweeper. I don't believe we do. But I think that's something that our city is growing into being big enough here in a couple of years, you know, that should, you know, we should try to look at. Because it does take a while and it, anyways, just like some of the other things with that we had to grow up as a city to, you know, say this makes more sense to have. It might be something in the future to do, but we love our trees, but then they do come with the fall and the leaves are so pretty, but they can ravage some havoc. So anyways, that's all I have.
Cool. For me, C4s this week, it's on housing. Big buzzword I hear out there. So we'll be talking about housing, the metro package that passed and all that. I'm sure one of the things that will come up is the conversation that we had from our last meeting, which is some of the incentives that Clackamas County Commission's passing for some of these developments and non-incorporated land. Fireworks been talked about. You guys, so that was a super special night. We got super lucky though, right? I mean, like we won. It didn't rain. Like that was huge. Yeah, right. I mean, it was still super cold though, but it ended up being just a really special night. I mean, you couldn't find a seat in the grandstands. Nowhere could you sit in the grandstands. People were standing all over the track and everything, and the fireworks show was magnificent. It was great.
Those seniors are going to talk about this forever.
Yeah,
their last game.
Yeah, it ended up being a really cool event. One of the cooler events I've been to in my time in Standing. Thank you to staff and everybody who really put that together. That was really great. So on Halloween, the police was out and about last night. You know, they popped up, you know, Mooney came with his lights going, all the kids went nuts, and it's just, you know, community policing at its best. One of those cool parts about being part of a small community. The trick or treat trail was mentioned, all the businesses participating, the kids walking up and down and seeing each other on that. And I heckled Jordan about it a little bit. I am applying a little bit of pressure for an in-person tree lighting this year, right? I mean, we were able to gather in the grandstands, not a seat to be done at a football game, to look into the sky and see fireworks. I think we can be responsible enough to watch the tree light. Now, I'm all about to each their own on how we handle this pandemic, and I thought the drive-through was great. And so if it's a hybrid type event, I think that's great too. But I do think that, you know, that it would be great to get back to some of our traditions. And on that, our community organizations, I mean, we have just watched as they have persevered over the last year and a half. Drive-through trick or treat trail last year, we had it in person. This year, Sandy Helping Hand with their camo cons coming back, and kind of a more, you know, bar by bar, establishment by establishment way of how everyone's tackling the pandemic. But we've really kept a lot of our traditions alive in our own little ways. And it took a lot of fortitude from those organizations and their leadership to do it. So just wanted to give them some kudos on that. And then we have a lot going on in our community in homelessness. This was the first meeting in a long time that really didn't come up. It did a little bit, I guess, actually, with the pedestrian sidewalk lighting. We have a lot going on, everything from our homelessness task force is actively meeting to the organization. I saw Maggie was one of the people that was watching. She has her needs analysis going on. I'm on the board with Mike Walker on the Action Center, and Lori's joining, where we have a lot of money in surplus in our reserves there. We own the building there outright. I'm looking at maybe putting together a homelessness meeting for all these different entities to come together and kind of report back on what they're working on. And
he's already okay.
And we've talked with staff about doing it as well. So I just want to get that on everyone's radar screen. It's kind of a report back. What are we doing? How can we work together? Because I do think we're on the cusp of where ARPA funds are nationally. There's a lot of money being put towards homelessness. If we get ourselves together and kind of get pointed in the right direction, we might be able to do some special stuff. So kind of keep that on the lookout for that. And with that, the Eyck Park event. Lucy went to that. Thank you to Carol Cohen, our Community Services, for that. I know I've brought up in the past doing like Christmas, almost like a grotto kind of Christmas light thing in the holidays. But Eyck Park, should continue to become more of like the living room space of our community where we meet and gather. And I know there's a lot of things we're talking about doing at the community campus and stuff, but what a special gem we have in our community, Eyck Park, that we need to continue to be looking at doing stuff there. So, and let's keep the police walk through. So that was the last thing as Mackenzie and Lucy left for the night. They said, hey, did anybody walk through the park before sending anyone there? And I thought, we didn't have that conversation. I'm sure that did happen, but we need to be kind of careful with some of that stuff too. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting.
Good meeting today.